I would like to call to order the April 1st, 2024 City Council meeting to order at 7:01 PM. If you rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. One nation, God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. All right. Thank you all for coming tonight. We've got roll call. You're all present, except for Councilor Holmes is online tonight. So now we're looking at the agenda. I'm looking for a motion to tonight's agenda.
So moved.
Council President Miller, it's a motion to accept the agenda. Any seconds?
Second.
Second by Councilor LaFrenz. Any discussion? All those in favor state by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We have public comments tonight. I do have two now. These are going to be public comments that are not regarding anything on the agenda. If you do want to speak, please, Susan has the pink copies there. Is there anybody online yet you've heard from? I'll give my speech here. This is a place on the agenda where the public is invited to speak to council regarding any matter not on the agenda and not scheduled for a public hearing. Members of the public addressing council are requested to give their name and city of residence. Please try not to repeat questions and allow for more speakers. Speakers are to limit their testimony to 5 minutes, as we are limited to 30 minutes total for all public comments. And if you like, I do have a timer that will help show you the time. So we do have one on here. Brady Preheim would like to come on up, speak really nice and loud into that microphone so the lady online can hear you.
I just wanted to actually commend you and your council. It's pretty rare that I show up and don't have a complaint or to yell at somebody. And so for me to come before you and actually thank you, number one, in particular, Councilor Holmes, who did a fantastic job of calling out the transparency and accountability page, which is anything but transparent or accountable. And I really appreciate that. And I also really appreciate how we're handling the entire, and I know it's kind of on the agenda and I'm not exactly sure, but how you're handling the discussion with about the Columbia County Sheriff's Office and the fact that you are having, I think, a public conversation about it. You know, you've not made any decisions. And I had the opportunity to speak one of your officers individually about it. And he was very complimentary of the council. You know, didn't commit either way, very politically correct about whether he thought it was a good idea or not idea. But what was striking to me is the faith that he put in the council to listen, take input, and make a decision that was best for everyone. And I think that shows a lot of confidence in you and the way that you're handling it. And I appreciate it. And I really appreciate the comments that Councilor Holmes, the only time I've ever played a part of a public meeting on my radio show. And really do appreciate her comments because often, and I know you get a lot of complaints, as I usually do complain, but silence is consent. And the fact that you didn't do that, I really do appreciate that, and that you brought out problems with a group that has put out false information. And it's not just about you. They have multiple topics that they are unfortunately spreading false information about. And the one last thing that sort of followed up on your work session that I would like to put the bug in your ear is sewer and water. It's an issue for you. It's an issue for St. Helens. St. Helens wants to fill our wastewater lagoon, which is a $170 million project. And eventually, we're going to be a merged town, St. Helens and Scappoose. And I brought this up on the economic development team when I was a member of that probably 6 years ago. And unfortunately, the mayor at that time was adamantly opposed to the plan. But I think now is the time to start a conversation about how you create a regional water sewer district, build the new plant in Warren, because eventually Warren will either be an incorporated city or become part of St. Helens or Scappoose. That's going to happen. No, I'm not talking 5 years or 10 years. 25 and 50 years. And I think it's now time to start that conversation about how we look at water and sewer as a regional solution. And I've already mentioned this to the council in St. Helens, and they are receptive. Now, I think it's time to start those conversations about how you do that. And it's a cost savings similar to what you're doing with your police. I think there are economies of scales by merging and combining services. And I think water and sewer is an important one.
Great.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Brady. Thank you. Teresa, would you like me to read yours now or when we start right when we start the agenda item on the that leasing? Okay, I'll read it. I've got one more to read right when we start. I think it's number 8. Yes. Any more public comment? Anything online? Okay, appreciate it. Moving on to the consent agenda. Tonight, we're looking at March 18, 2024 City Council work session minutes and March 18, 2024 City Council meeting minutes. Looking for somebody to make a motion to approve the consent agenda. Yes, Councilor Santiago. So Santiago moves to approve the consent agenda. Any seconds? Second by Councilor Jacobs. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor state by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we are on to the next item, City Council interviews. We do have an open vacancy down at the end of the table. And we have, it looks like 2 people here tonight to interview. Ty Bailey is online and Joel Haugen is in the audience. If Joel would step out with Susan, she'll set you aside there and we'll interview Ty first. We'll bring you in to ask you some questions. We all have a set of questions here. Mr. Bailey, we will start with you. And we will start with Marissa Jacobs. Councilor Jacobs would start with the first question.
Hello, Ty.
Hello.
Thank you for putting your application in. Good to see you again. First question for the evening. Why are you interested in becoming a member of the Scappoose City Council?
Fundamentally, to help out. I'm a member on a number of the different committees across various areas, and I feel like I have a lot that I can contribute. And fundamentally, I always apply for the open spots because I want to make sure that you have options and we don't end up with a one person applying.
Thank you. Councilor LaFrance.
Hello, Ty. Thank you for applying and for being with us tonight. What unique skills and experiences would you bring to the city council position?
Yeah, as an executive, I do a lot of large-scale strategic planning. I have a fairly large, globally diverse staff, do a lot of contract work and analysis, as well as working with various different stakeholders across different verticals to allow me context and a sense of empathy, which helps out, I find, in sometimes contentious meeting and group situations. So a background that assists with this.
Thank you. Councilor Santiago.
Hi.
Hello.
The position of city council is a very time consuming. For example, my monthly meetings, committee meetings, prepping for meetings, by reading materials, etc. Would you be able to devote the necessary time to adequately fill the position? That's the question. And then to follow that, please describe your current time commitments and how you would be able to balance the new position.
Yeah, so I absolutely would have the time, especially for this interim role. I'm someone who doesn't go halfway on things, which is another reason why I've been interested in an interim position, because if I was in full, I would be for the entire term. My other commitments, I'm on the budget committee, I'm on the planning commission, and I'm on the school district budget committee. Also doing some scouts with my kid and, weekend activities. Most of those things, because they're already part of the city, would be easily accomplished because this would roll right into them. The biggest challenge would be, as you can see, I'm at a hotel because I've been traveling for work. With notice, I could accommodate appropriately to be in person for meetings themselves. This stuff just got booked ahead, so I was not able to accommodate for this particular meeting. And if I got the position, probably not the next couple because I'm going to be bouncing around. But beyond that, I think I'd be able to make sure my schedule was well accommodating to the needs associated.
Thank you.
Thank you. Please explain the council city manager form of government that we have here in Scappoose, and what do you see your role as a councilor being if you were appointed?
Yeah, so we have a city manager system, which means the actual running of the city in a day-to-day operational sense is managed by the city manager. The mayor and the council works in an advisory and executive function, not actually full authority, but advisory and legislative, which balances out as opposed to a strong mayoral system.
Thank you. Council President Miller.
How do you feel that disagreements and/or debate among city council members fits in the decision-making process?
I think conflict is probably inevitable and critical. If everyone was completely aligned at all times, there probably wouldn't need to be as many people on council or in a deliberative body with the structures in place. Robert's Rules exists for a reason to balance out conflict. Just because there's conflict does not mean that things are going off the rails or that emotive states are taking hold. It's just important to understand that everyone's, coming from a space of best effort towards their community.
Thank you.
Councilor Holmes.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, Ty. What do you think the city of Scappoose is doing well?
I think the city's doing a good job balancing out the current challenges from, the COVID hangover in terms of inflation and budget constraints, specifically around the costs of goods versus the possibility of, growing income associated to the budgets. I think we've done a very good job managing what limited parks and recreation facilities we have at this point. I know we'd like to do a lot more, but I think looking at neighboring cities, looking at the communities around, we've weathered a lot over the past several years in a pretty good state. Also, just real quick call out to the facilities and so on. The sidewalks across the street near the city hall, wonderful. I walk all the time. Really loving all of the sidewalk work going on in the city.
Thank you. Councilor Jacobs.
What do you think the city of Scappoose can do better?
I think that the city of Scappoose, I think we need to figure out ways of communicating such that people have a better understanding of costs and limitations associated to our tax base. Scappoose is in kind of a weird tax zoning situation. So a lot of people think we have a lot more taxable space than we actually do. We also have challenges with business growth bringing in taxable income, which limits our budgetary capabilities for long-term planning. How we do that exactly? Open to ideas. I would love to float and communicate, but I find that one of the most challenging things I've had in my 8 years on the budget committee is just chatting with people online or in civic events and having them fully understand the limitations and the budget constraints that we face as a community.
Councilor LaFrentz.
Ty, in your opinion, what are the three most important issues facing the city of Scappoose?
I think managing our growth in such a way that we can really make it so people want to stay here as we develop youth, move into business and so on, without pricing ourselves out. We have the classic catch-22 of people not wanting us to build, but also wanting things to be affordable, and you can't really have both. So it's a matter of how we balance those needs in a way that doesn't change the core culture. Two, I think the challenges presenting to us is really cultivating business opportunities within the city or within the surrounding area such that we do not end up as a bedroom community fully. Now that like Hillsborough and Beaverton have been fully packed up, I think commuter space is really looking our direction for just a bedroom space for commuting back into cities. And then the third one is, I think, just keeping up with the time and the place, how we manage our infrastructure, how we manage our telecommunications, making sure our rural community is able to keep up with the 21st century.
Thank you. Counselor Santiago.
So with these three issues, what do you think the city of Scappoose should do to address these?
I think we're doing a rather good job, honestly, on a lot of the city planning and balancing. I think that my previous statement around how we communicate to the citizenry will come into play so that we can balance out our civic growth plans to the realities of a community looking at greater density. I think that's going to be a real cultural challenge for us, and we'll have to work together to make sure we have a cohesive discussion place and ability to communicate on it. I think from a business and infrastructure standpoint, really it's a matter of prioritization. Everyone's pulled in a lot of different ways, and I think we just need to start looking and getting creative at what could cultivate more real boots on the ground business opportunities as opposed to administrative or executive business opportunities.
Go ahead.
So what about attracting new business? We're talking about that your second.
Yeah, well, and that's what I'm meaning is trying to see what space we have, especially like by the airport. What can we do more to get more industrial going? How can we get more out of our OMIC relationship? I think those are areas that we need to really push on because it is one of the unique opportunities that Scappoose has that could bring in real long-term jobs. When I look around, I just see a lot of our businesses are designed around 1 or 2 person shops that are mostly administrative in function.
Council President Miller.
Is there anything you'd like to ask us?
At this time, I don't think so. In all honesty, I've had the pleasure of having this conversation with you all before, and I've chatted with, I think, almost all of you in some committee meeting at some point or another, so I feel fairly comfortable with the space.
Thank you, Ty. I appreciate you applying again.
Absolutely. Thank you all very much.
One more, Councilor Holmes.
Yes, Ty, is there anything else that you would like to share with us?
Fundamentally, only that I really enjoy the city of Scappoose. I like working with you all. I like volunteering where I can to help our community. And I always come here with the humble opinion of making sure that we're never in a spot where we end up just with no choice on the council. So if nothing else, I represent a calm center extra.
Thank you. And one question, I guess, for clarifying for Mike, if you're on the council, you can't be on planning commission or budget commission. So those positions would open up. Okay.
That is true. That would definitely be a possible challenge for you, I think, because then you would have to appoint.
Yeah, find some more. Appreciate it very much. Does anybody have anything to add before we say goodnight? Okay, well, thank you very much, Mr. Bailey. I appreciate your willingness to do this. All right, we're on to our next. Bull Haugen, come on down. We're going to go through just the same order there. Questions? No. Especially people that have done this 3 times now, we need to revisit. You want to go backwards? Okay. Okay, welcome, Mr. Haugen. Appreciate you applying. Thank you for coming tonight. We've got 11 questions for you. Each of us will ask a couple. We'll start with number 1, Councilor Jacobs.
Good evening.
Thank you for applying.
Welcome.
Why are you interested in becoming a member?
Well, the bottom line is, I'm not sure how to be real candid, there's a lot of stuff I can be doing out there, but I really feel at this juncture that a shovel-ready council person to join you And you've got a lot of hot stuff cooking on the front burners. And the one in particular is the hiring of a city manager. I think the only one on the council right now is Tyler, that has experience in this. And he will, I'm sure will weigh in and say that, it's a tough process. And it's a challenge. It's an incredible challenge to find the right person that's going to be and it's going to be the most important decision you make on council. And I'm pretty sure that Larry and Tyler would agree with that, having gone through it, and as well as Pete in the audience. So it's something that you absolutely have to drill into, and I think I can be an asset for this going forward. And that's my main motivation at this juncture. Having someone that has the 40 years of experience in the community, it's been through multiple police chiefs, been through multiple city managers, was involved in hiring with the last city manager. Larry and I teamed up to help recruit Mike Sykes back in 2014. And it was a tough sell. I think Larry would agree with that, but we were able to do this certain amount of twisting that allowed us to bring that home. And so I'm hoping that if you select me, and I'm not going to be disappointed if you don't, trust me. But if you do select me, I think I can be helpful at going forward.
Thank you. Councilor LaFrance.
Hi, Joel. Thanks for joining us and throwing your hat in. What unique skills and experiences would you bring to the city council position?
Well, it kind of relates back to I'm kind of reluctant to say unique. I do have a skill set, but I'm not sure how unique it is. But my experiences in the city cover the gamut. My 7 years on council, and the fact that I've worked in state government, I worked in federal government, I worked in local government, I worked in all levels of government. I've also worked in private enterprise. I've run a small business. So I have, I'm a private pilot, so I kind of fit all these different niches that are useful for a city. And again, I'm not sure I'm unique, but I do have a wide variety, including military experience, a total 8 years, and active duty and National Guard. So I kind of bring a menu of stuff that maybe not everybody has.
Councilor Santiago.
Thank you, Joel. Thank you for applying. The position of city council is time consuming, as you already know. For example, bi-monthly meetings, committee meetings, prepping for meetings and reading material, etc. Would you be able to devote the necessary time adequately to fill this position? Please describe your current time commitment and how you would be able to balance the position.
That's probably my biggest advantage here from a council perspective and a city perspective. I'm retired. So I have the bandwidth and the energy and enthusiasm because I love Scappoose and I want it to excel and I want Scappoose to win. So I do have the bandwidth and granted my energy level isn't what it was when I was 40, but I can muster enough energy to I think more than fulfill my commitment to Scappoose and City Council.
Thank you. Please explain the council city manager form of government that we have here in Scappoose, and what do you see your role as a councilor being if you were selected?
Well, as you might suspect, I'm aware of the process here in our charter. And so we have a strong city manager. We've got a legislative body in the council. And the legislative body gives marching orders to the city manager, who is administrator for city staff. So that's our current charter. Now, I suppose you could, Brady brought up an interesting notion, for the long term, which probably is an element that should go on the 50-year plan. What is this world going to look like in 10, 15, 20 years? We don't know. But this notion of merging with St. Helens is probably something that should be chewed on. And so that I went off I went off track there. What was the question again?
Just what do you see your role as a counselor appointed?
Well, my role is to help legislate the processes for the city going forward. And I need to, we need to support each other. But we also need to be critical and give constructive criticism where we think it's due.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Council President Miller.
Hi, Joel.
Miller.
How do you feel that disagreements and our debate among city council members fits in the decision-making process?
Well, first of all, they're essential. You know, if everybody's on the same page or everybody has the same views, you're not going to have a real productive outcome for any decision. So you got to have debate and argument. And if you don't have that debate and argument, you're probably not going to end up with a good decision. But that debate and that confrontation or those challenges have to be met in a civil and respectful manner. And if you don't do that, then it's very destructive. But if you don't have the rubs here and there, you are things you're going to agree on completely. But there's going to be things that come up where you're going to disagree, and in those situations, that's healthy. And you see that any legislative body has that.
You, Councilor Holmes.
Yes, good evening, Joel. What do you think the city of Scappoose is doing well?
There's a lot of stuff we're doing well. We've managed to recruit some superior folks for our committees. That's truly awesome. We've got an incredible library that we've developed. We've got an excellent start for our park system, and I'm really enthused about that. And I think going forward, that's going to be something we're going to all be very, very proud of. We also have managed to, in this community, with the help of council, is recruit and maintain some really talented staff. I think the city of Scappoose is just in a catbird seat with their staff. And that is a critical ingredient. So when we get the right city manager to lead that staff, nothing's going to stop this community. So those are the real pluses that I see. And then our law enforcement we have a nucleus of amazing law enforcement. Lieutenant Flewellen is an absolute class act. And so we've got the ingredients here, and all it takes is that catalyst and that leadership and the inspiration from the next city manager that's going to bring this home.
Thank you. Councilor Jacobs.
I think you just answered my next
Yeah.
question. What do you think the city of Scappoose can do better?
Well, you can always do things better. And so I think we need to, some of these it's kind of nitpicky, but one of the things we can do better is we have in the last few years devoted an inordinate amount of time and expense to consultants and attorneys that it's questionable whether or not they were necessary. And so, and that maybe in some cases can be destructive to the process. So I would clean that up a little bit. I think there are opportunities in the 50-year planning process that are some holes, and I think Brady pointed to one right now, just recently. And Mike Sykes pointed to one at the last meeting, the issue of power. That's critical for our economic development success in the future. So there are elements like that we really should be thinking out of the box on. And how are we going to deal and resolve some of these long-term things, even though we don't know what the world's going to look like in 5 years. Hell, we don't know what the world's going to look like in a year. So pardon my French. But those are some things. And I also think we need to do a much better job protecting the floodplain. And that is so crucial to this community, where we've got 35% of the community in the floodplain. That's going to get worse over the coming years. And so we've got to make an overt effort to protect the floodplain and at all costs, because that is going to be so essential going forward, regardless of what happens internationally or in the state, from at the local level, protection of that floodplain is critical. And I think you already know my feeling on that and from past discussions. So.
Councilor LaFrenz.
Joel, in your opinion, what are the three most important issues facing the city of Scappoose?
Well, first of all, we probably don't know what those issues are yet. And, so you've got so many things coming down the pike on us. The things you can't you have no control over. You don't have control over the politics, the politics at the state level or the national level. You have no control over that. But you do have some control over thinking about how is our economy going to compete, our local economy going to compete with others, because we've got, for example, the latest Census Bureau from November of 2023 report came out that in 50 years, the United States population is expected to decline. So last year in Oregon, or not last year, but the latest one that we had records for between 21 and 22, we almost lost 0.5% of Oregon population. So we got to be thinking about those kinds of things for the future. And so how are we going to be part of the half that's going to lose population in the small communities across the country, according to the census projections? So, and then how are we going to deal with our infrastructure needs? And I'm really glad that Brady brought up that point about looking at St. Helens. How can we work together more efficiently and effectively? So we're all in this together, especially in our local region here. Our little sandbox here that we call home. We've got to come out with a better way to work collectively and with our neighbors so that we can all succeed. And there again, it comes back to our next city manager. If that next city manager doesn't have the initiative and the energy and the enthusiasm and the investment to do just that, we're going nowhere. And it threads back to why it's so important to have that right person for this next city manager in Scappoose. And I know I have so much confidence in Larry for kind of thinking out of the box. And coming up with that right person. And so I'm just so happy that he is here helping us for that. Did that answer all the question? Okay.
Thank you. Councilor Santiago.
You started with, we don't know, but you obviously did know. So adding to that question, this question is actually a second part to it. So what do you think the city of Scappoose should do to address these important issues?
To address the what?
To address these important issues that you mentioned?
Well, first of all, we don't know exactly what we're facing, but we can rely on one thing, for example, the current climate regime, in 50 to 60 years, it's quite likely that the sea level is going to be up maybe 2 meters. So how is that going to affect our infrastructure? And so our sewage treatment plant right now, if sea level goes up 2 meters, that means the river level goes up 2 meters. And we're in a permeable gravel basin. So either we're going to have to invest in a lot of pumping and build the dike up, or we're going to have to move that plant. And so, and again, that's where maybe this collaboration with St. Helens and building a new, thinking forward, what's coming down at us. So maybe that building that new plant in Warren isn't a half bad idea, where it's serving everybody. So those are the kinds of things that we don't know exactly when and how, but we know this is going to change. Transportation is another issue. So we're seeing increasing transportation congestion coming through Highway 30, but with the advent of with self-automated autonomous vehicles, that's going to appreciably increase the capacity of our roadways. So the engineers suggest that by probably threefold, our capacity of our roadways are going to increase the capacity with autonomous vehicles. And we know this is coming, and it's not, that genie's out of the bottle. So thinking about that kind of stuff for our infrastructure, fortunately, here in Scappoose, we are in really good position. We've got an airport for infrastructure locally. we're connected to water. The worst case scenario is for our water supply. We can have a rainy well on Multnomah Channel, or we can tap into the reservoirs from the Santosh gravel pits, or Cal Portland now. We could even look at storage up above Gurley Creek. There's also potential storage up on Vista. So we've got all kinds of alternatives here where we can, which makes us enviable for many communities. I think I missed something though. Part of your question.
No, I mean, you did bring up other topics, but you did address infrastructure needs, and then how would you address the important issue on, because I think you mentioned something of how we measure in this as a city to others.
How we measure up to other cities.
Enemies, so yeah. That what you're talking? So that's
there again. That's talk about doing smart things. And so to quote Barack Obama, from his years, let's not do dumb stuff.
Thank you.
Council President Miller.
Is there anything you would like to ask us?
Yes, actually I would. We are in this era of unprecedented change, which we have no control over. Absolutely unprecedented. So you've got the looming AI intersection. You've got a global economy with new alliances that are forming. And you can just see the storm clouds on the horizon. So, I would like to ask each of you what you feel in your gut is going to be our biggest challenge going forward here in Scappoose. I'll start with Tyler, please.
I think our buildable land is probably our biggest challenge in Scappoose.
I'm thinking funding is right off the top of my head. I mean, we can't do anything that we want if we don't have the funds or the ability to get funds, pay for the things that we need.
Exactly.
You took my answer. Money, finding the money to do everything that we're doing all these plans for. Great ideas, and we need all these infrastructure. How we're gonna pay for it?
Well, and then again, come back to Brady's comment. Spreading the obligation. And so the more forces we have in our army, the more successful we're probably going to be. I agree.
Yeah, so living on the creek myself, I'm gonna have to agree. The floodplain that you mentioned is of concern, especially since, like you said, 30%. Yeah.
And I think there's another thread to that too. We've got the potential for this incredible park system, this linear park system. It's going to happen, and if we can, as a city, can facilitate that, move that faster, it may take 10 years. But if we don't help facilitate that, it's going to take longer. Because the Banks Vernonia State Park and the Salmonberry Corridor, they are going to have. It's going to be an elegant linear trail one day. But if we can help facilitate that and move that along, that'll also facilitate protecting our floodplain. Because then that environmental issue, that kind of the incubator concept that was so successful in Bend, that can apply here too, not at that scale. But again, I think protecting that floodplain is just unbelievably important.
Did you want to add one?
Funding.
Funding.
Always think about the dollars.
Yeah, well, that's kind of almost kind of a no-brainer,
No-brainer, but that's the one that actually keeps me up.
Oh, yeah, and so absolutely agree.
Councilor Holmes, if you'd like to add and then go into your final question.
Yeah, I would also add funding as well. As we see the Parks Master Plan. We just heard about the Facilities Master Plan that will be coming before us. And we've also charged staff with looking at, potentially a strategy for a community center. What would it take? What would it cost down the road? So we have a lot of things that we need to look at funding and how we do that with the limited amount of tax dollars that we get. So yeah, I would echo funding. So the last question here is, Joel, is there anything else that you would like to share with us?
No, but again, if I am selected, I think I can be useful. And if I'm not selected, that's fine. You know, I've got lots of stuff to do. So we've got, it's really neat to see the enthusiasm from the community to serve on council. Because that's what makes a community good. And we've got such an incredible potential here. The council as it is and the mayor, we're top drawer. And, you know, I think we should be real proud of where we are. And if we can stimulate this person that come in and as the next leader, city manager, we are going to be in really good shape. But if we pick the wrong person, then things go the other direction. And so that's how critical it is. And it's not an easy task. And we may well have to go way out of the box. And I've got some ideas that we could probably banter about for hours, but I won't take up that much time tonight. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you, Joel. I really appreciate it. We have some good people that love to help at Scappoose, and it's really nice to see. I'm sure both of you will continue to help and be involved. You guys both have been involved a long time. Joel, you're one of the big reasons probably many of us are here, and Scappoose is where it is. So we really appreciate your service and dedication over the many years. So we're here ready to vote. If wanted to fold one up and give one to me here. Waiting for one more to come in. You got any come in yet, Susan? Okay, I got it. Hey, appreciate all of you here. So Ty Online, I'm just gonna go through and read one at a time. I'm gonna mix them up so we're all out of, but there, we will know who has whose vote. I will read them. Just won't go in any particular order. Okay. Counselor Jacobs, Joel. Leave that one up for a second. Counselor Holmes, Ty Bailey. Counselor Backus, Ty Bailey. Counselor Miller, Ty Bailey. Counselor Santiago, Ty Bailey. You stick with that. Counselor LaFrenz abstains. So I believe that's 4-1 to 0 or 1. Oath of office, we're gonna, oh, because he's not here. I'm gonna wait on that. Okay, well, I appreciate both of you doing this. Thank you. I've been looking forward dealing with you in a while, Ty. I really appreciate you hanging in there and look forward to it. Congratulations. Does anybody want to say anything as we move on? Okay, thank you.
Thank you
All
all
right,
very
we're on to proclamation. I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'm going to save the soil day. We're going to skip the oath of office for now. Proclamation. I'm just going to jump down. Save Soil Day proclamation. We read this last year. It's very important going into the climate change in the environment. This is a very important one. So I'm going to just jump down to now. Therefore, I, Mayor Joe Backus, the city of Scappoose, do hereby proclaim March 21st as Safe Soil Day in Scappoose. As soil is vital to all life, and urge all citizens to be a part of the Safe Soil movement to support national policies towards soil restoration and aim to raise the organic content of soil to a minimum of 3% to 6%. Be it further proclaimed, I urge all citizens to participate in creating bright futures for our children and the future of our planet. Witness whereof I hereunto set my hand and cause the seal of the city of Scappoose to be affixed at Scappoose City Hall on this day, April 1st, 2024. Thank you. Okay, moving on to number 6, Habitat for Humanity request for land use fee waiver. of a 10-lot subdivision. Community Development Director Lori Joseph here to give us a report. And just, we can hear you, but for them to hear you online, we really need to be into the mic. Yes.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Yes, so tonight we do have a request from Habitat for Humanity. They have submitted a subdivision application on March 22nd for a 10-lot subdivision, which would support the development of 10 townhomes. And they have submitted a letter to council via the planning department to request a waiver of their land use fees totaling $6,000. We do have a provision in the development code. It's in chapter 17.164.210 subsection B. It states that council may, on its own motion, waive the land use application or appeal fee for a nonprofit organization. I have not had this request before, so I kind of just outlined the information here for you. And I also have Jennifer Anderson here tonight, the executive director from Habitat for Humanity, Columbia County. And she did submit the letter that is attached as Exhibit A to your packets tonight. So again, one of the issues here is that payment of land use application fees are due when the application is submitted. And so in order for, the city is reviewing the application, but in order for it to be deemed complete, either council would need to waive this fee or Habitat would need to write a check for that so that eventually we could deem the application incomplete and complete and schedule them for planning commission. There really are no criteria for you to use to review this request. That's the only reason why we didn't really provide a recommendation per se. I did want to provide some additional background information, which I've included here. Habitat for Humanity did previously request some ARPA funding on the project frontage. They front on 2 different streets, both of which have substandard water mains. One's a 2-inch, which is incredibly small, and one's a 4-inch. So as part of this project, they would have been required to upsize that to 8-inch lines on both frontages. I did include the excerpt from November 21st, 2022 council meeting minutes where the council did approve expenditures of $50,000 to support upsizing the Southeast Myrtle Street water main and $250,000 for the Southeast Oak Street water main, which would help support those project costs, which otherwise it would be borne by the developer. So again, tonight, Jennifer is here if you have any questions for her. But again, it's entirely up to council as far as if you would like to waive those fees.
First question, like you said, you haven't had this request before.
Correct.
It's in there obviously for a reason. Have you, looking at your applications in St. Helens and elsewhere, you've applied for this waiver at other cities?
We have never done a subdivision before, and so there are multiple fees associated with this and costs for infrastructure that we have not come across in the past. So this is a huge, huge expense for us. This whole project is likely $3 million for us. There are fees for, I think just the system development fees are $171,000 the city. I may take a moment to say thank you for the ARPA fees. It's made a huge difference. I recently applied for a grant that was a competitive grant for all Habitat affiliates up the state of Oregon, and it was through our state organization. And we got $144,000 from this grant, and the review committee told me that the decision was based on the support that we have gotten from the city of Scappoose. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. President.
I want to go over a little bit of context just for the record. And I don't remember, Jeanette, were you on council at the time that we had Habitat for Humanity's request for ARPA funds?
I was in the audience.
Okay, all right. So Lori did a good job of covering it, but can you, Jennifer, can you remind us what your initial request was on ARPA funds?
Didn't look up specifically what you brought. I just looked at the minutes was.
Yeah, I can.
I think
It was much higher than the 50,000.
Okay.
Yeah, we
yeah,
were
I
looking
can-
for the,
I can improvise. So it was determined that council thought at that point that the best use of funds would have been to help or to upgrade, pay for the upgrade of those water lines, which Habitat for Humanity would have been required to do in order to develop the subdivision that you're looking to develop. And we thought it was a better use of funds at that time to give the $250,000 and $50,000. Otherwise, you would have had to pay for that. So I just want to make sure that that's understood by council, because I think that it's a valid point to be made here in making a decision. My next question, or my question to you is, if we are to waive these $6,000 in fees, is that just going to go back into profit for Habitat for Humanity? And then how do you use money? What is your organization's mission statement? What do you do?
our mission statement is to build homes, community, and hope. So when we're looking at the total cost of this project, I'm just taking it one step at a time. So we'll likely have to build these homes in phases, so we don't have enough money to do the entire project right up front. So any assistance that you can provide us is, greatly appreciated.
Okay, and then do you sell the homes, or do you give the homes away, or how does that work?
Well, we sell the homes, a portion, whatever the family can afford, they get a USDA loan. And then when we sell the home, we roll that into the next house that we're building.
Okay, and what is the criteria for deciding who gets a house?
So we base that on, it's 35 to 60% of the median income. So that's based on, area median income is, part of the Portland MSA, the HUD numbers, and they're kind of adjusted for family size. And then we review them for, can they qualify for a USDA loan? And then we make the final selection based on need.
Okay, so we don't necessarily, for context here, we don't have to necessarily grant $6,000. That's a request, right? So council also has the option to waive a lesser amount. Is that correct?
I would say that would be fully in your control. That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
I do have Counselor Holmes online, would like to ask a question.
Yeah, I think I would like to just maybe add a comment. So as part of the 50-year plan process, we did go through kind of the different policy options and incentives that the city could offer to attract, affordable housing and housing suitable for folks with lower incomes. And we just don't have a lot of those formal policies in place, if I'm correct, Lori,
That's
right?
Yep, that's exactly.
So yeah, so, in lieu of having something formally in place, I think this is a gesture that the city could maybe make as a way to support, at least this project, and then look at other options going forward.
Thank you. One question, a lot of our fees, we are talking about recouping or just kind of covering. Do we have a cost of the fees, a guesstimate of the amount of money, time it takes for the fee that they're asking for? It's just a permit fee?
This is to process it through the land use approval. So it's a combination of not just planning, but also the engineering land use review for just through the land use process itself. So that includes, reviewing of the application, meeting and going over any questions that the applicant might have during that process, noticing agency partners, drafting the staff report, and holding the meeting itself. So it's reflective of the fees which you set at 75% cost recovery, basically, for all of our staff and everyone who touches that, from CDC admin who's here to do minutes the night of the meeting, the minutes afterwards. So it's built to encapsulate all of that.
So it's the cost is more than 6,000. We're just recouping 75% roughly.
Correct.
Question I do have too is, can you earmark those for SCAPU citizens? Can you put them higher on the list, give them first chance. You know, is there anything to that degree?
We are a county-wide organization, so we generally help people in the county. What I can do is when we open the application process, focus the outreach on the city of Scappoose.
It's okay. Yes, Counselor Santiago. Let me, just one quick, did we have any guesstimates on the 250,000? If the cost is going to be more than that or less than that? Is that,
Well, I'm not positive on that. I assume since 2022 costs have likely gone up. I know Dave does have this project in his budgets for this upcoming year. We want to do it in conjunction with the development so that it's all kind of going together. But I couldn't.
so we're
answer
we're offering them
specifically.
up to that for ARPA, 50 and 250. If the
Mhm.
costs go above that, that is on Habitat for Humanity.
Well, we were given 50,000,
Okay.
and then the city, I think, earmarked,
250 to do
250.
the other frontage.
yes.
Okay. Okay. Yes, if you're ready. Yeah.
I move that the council waive the land fees totaling 6,000 for Habitat for Humanity nonprofit organization.
I have a motion on table for Counselor Santiago to offer the fee waiver for Habitat Humanity. Second by Counselor Jacobs. More discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor state by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Appreciate it. Can you please keep us updated, either through Lori? It would be nice to know when ground starts breaking and.
I do want to compliment you on your staff because Lori and Chris have just been amazing to work with.
Great. I've been driving by that lot, just wondering, waiting and waiting. Exciting.
Thank you,
Thank
Jennifer.
you. Okay. Oh, gone quicker than I thought. We're on to number 8. Ordinance 98, there's number 7, 98, ordinance 918, franchise with Century Link. This is a public hearing and we are in first reading. Interim City Manager Larry Lehman, would you like to take it away?
Basically, we're looking at this almost as a housekeeping type of event. It expired quite a while ago.
That's what really, 2006?
Yeah,
A typo?
so I don't think, well, Susan may have a typo. I don't think so, though.
Okay.
Anyhow, they brought it to our attention, Mr. Link and so forth, so we just basically have put it up to date.
When the contract expired, it just rolled over every year until now?
Correct. They kept paying the fees, so there wasn't any problem with that. So they're still paying the 7%.
And we've looked at it, it all looks, even though it was old, everything seems to be the same, the fees that we get or everything is, no real changes need to be made. Has our attorney looked at this to see if there are any new laws, any new?
Well, so, Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
so the problem that I keep having with these franchise agreements is the term that these franchises keep looking for. Because it doesn't benefit the city generally to have a long term because it just ties our hands unless there's a provision in here that says that we can raise the rate with notice. It's in their interest usually to have a longer term. But 10 years is a long time. So I just wonder what's the reason for that and why we don't do 3 or 5 year terms so that we can potentially have more ability to amend these franchise agreements if we need to.
I guess I'm gonna say it's customary. That's kind of the,
I guess they want a longer term because they're going to be investing quite a bit in infrastructure and they'd like to know that they have it going forward.
Well,
For that
that's
amount of
nice,
time?
but what are they gonna say if we say no to it? They're not gonna pack up and not do business here.
no, I am sure that if you want to change that, they would go along with that. We would have no choice. We want them now to be able to do business in town and to plan ahead and so forth.
Yeah, I mean, it helps us in that if they want to leave in 5 years or close down, then we still have the contract franchise. I guess if they're not here to do business, they're not.
This continues on a year by year basis.
Is the only thing that you would think that would we would want to look at is if the fee structure's changed and we were able to,
Well, I mean, where does the 7% come from? Is that based in data from other cities and what they're doing with other areas, or
That's a
where's
good
the
question. I
7%
think
come from?
that's statutory though.
it's the
I
limit.
wish I knew that for
Limit.
sure. I
That's
know
the
with the electrical systems, that's max.
Okay.
So if the legal system changed it and it went to 8 or 9, does that open it up to us? I mean, can you put in, that we get the legal limit, whatever that number is, and not,
Well, I guess my concern is that with notice, can we raise the rate? For example, like the mayor just brought up, if the cap or the ceiling raises by law what we can charge, do we have the flexibility to give notice and charge that amount?
If I'm looking at section 17, it can be amended. That's doing it with both agreeing to that.
Well, it says that it has to be mutually agreed upon.
Correct, right.
I would just ask that, yeah, in 4 or 5 years, if the legal limit goes up to 9%, you review and see if you can amend it. And
We can add a clause in that if the legal limit rises from that 7%, we would, that we could reopen it.
Yeah, I just don't want to get in a situation where we'd have the authority to raise it, and then we can't because of a contractual agreement, that if we would have made a shorter duration or with different terms, we would have that ability.
We will add a clause to that. We will send it to them and we'll have it back for the second reading.
Thank you.
again, it's $3,500 a year. It's not a big number, but every little bit helps, as we can see tonight. Okay, so it is a first hearing, so I will open the public hearing. You have anybody that'd like to speak on this? All right, seeing none, I will close the public hearing. And looking for a motion to approve ordinance 918.
That with
Push-
You make that and stop at discussion. Make a motion to approve.
that with amendment.
Yeah, with the.
Okay, we're making a motion with amendment, or do you need to bring it back with the amendment for us to?
No, you're okay with what you're doing. When we come back, we'll have that amendment in there, so we understand your
Second
intent.
reading. I have a motion to accept ordinance 918 with the amendment of adding the legal limit for the industry increases. We can revisit the contract.
Mayor?
Yes, Counselor Jacob.
Move that council adopt ordinance number 8, the amendment
On the record.
on the record. Thank you.
I have a motion from Counselor James to approve ordinance 918 with the amendment on the record. Any second?
Second.
Council President Miller seconds. We will leave it at that point and come back next meeting, second reading. Thank you. Okay, number 8, exploring options for 24/7, 365 on-duty law enforcement in Scappoose city limits. Can I real quickly, Kim, try to bring Ty up to speed a little bit, at least on my thoughts of where we are and what we're doing?
Yep, please do.
And I've got a public comment from Teresa Keller that I will read. And you guys can chime in, but this is just me speaking. Ty, through my election running, and Kim as well, safety and policing came up consistently. And as we spoke, we kept talking about 24/7 coverage. And as the sheriff levy passed last spring, and that was their talks, was able to get to 24/7. And even hearing Portland or St. Helens talking about their levy about getting to 24/7, we started talking about it again. And what's it going to take for Scappoose to get to that? And we first defined it in our minds as 24/7 coverage was 2 officers on duty in city limits at all times. Obviously, if they're taking someone to the jail or going to Portland, they'll take themselves out. But on duty, 2 officers in city limits at all times. And we thought we were really into that, but we wanted to, we needed to know more too. As citizens, is that important to them? But for our first steps is we wanted to see what the costs would be. So in the last couple months, we looked at how can you get to 24/7? Well, the one option is you keep it when your local police department, and this is how many officers it's going to take, and this is how much it's going to cost. This is where our current budget is, and here are our options. How long will it take? Other options is we see a lot of cities around the state, they will contract out with their local county officers. And so we brought that in as well, just to see budgetary, how much does that cost? Is that something that we can get to? And for the last couple of months, Councilor Holmes has really been asking a lot of questions, both of County Sheriff Pixley and our department on mainly with working with the county, looking at the contract, asking a lot more questions than just cost. And you'll see tonight, Kim's going to go through the discovery, kind of all the numbers that we've come up with so we can kind of compare apples to apples. How long would it take? Can they get there? And then it dives deep into other things such as uniforms and facilities and cars. And to me, this is a step where we now have some numbers and we can really look at it as a council and as a community and decide where to go next. My thoughts are, hopefully by the end of tonight, we can at least, council can make a decision at any time if they would like to end this or continue. If they want to continue, they can have more questions but that's kind of where we are tonight. So we're going to go through the discovery. In my mind, my next option, I would, if it continued, would be, and we'll get to Teresa's question, are the citizens going to be involved? And to me, that's kind of the next step. If we decide to continue looking at this, the citizens would need to be involved. This isn't going to just be a decision by council. We want to hear from the citizens of Scappoose. And I've heard from a lot of people outside of Scappoose. I have heard from many inside. I've talked to them, tried to reach out. And so we're kind of gathering that information so we can make a sound decision with the idea that we're trying to do what's best for our citizens, within our budget. It kind of stems back from retention issues, and we've had issues over the last couple of years with keeping officers, and this was one way we thought of how we can maybe address that issue. Anybody want to add anything to Ty before we move on? Okay, so I'm now into public comment. I'm going to read this from Teresa Keller. She is a citizen within city limits. And hopefully I kind of answered it, but does city council intend to notify all residents before making a final decision about contracting the police department? Are you going to hold a town hall and listen to the people that you serve? So in my mind, I speak for myself right now that I would say yes. I'm trying to do this based on what the citizens are telling me they want. And I wouldn't be doing a service to them if I didn't look at this and go out and ask. And so I do want to do that. And I hopefully as we go on tonight, maybe we'll see where that next step would be. Is that okay, Teresa? Great. Appreciate it.
Okay,
Sonia, go.
you have a town meeting on April 6th, and I believe that's part of the questions and the agenda, correct?
It can be. We are also in negotiations with our union, so we want to be very careful not to interfere with that. But yes, I mean, that's, if this continues, that is my thought, is I'm at a county, all-town meeting all morning, afternoon, and I'll be there to answer questions and listen to citizens from the city. And I'll reach out on Facebook and reach out through emails. And if we do decide to continue, that's one thought of the next step to get input from the citizens. And then that would maybe lead into our next meeting, April 15th, before we make a decision.
Just want to clarify one point. We're in negotiations for the collective bargaining agreement that comes up every so many years. That's what we're in negotiations for. It's a standard process.
With our police union, yes. So a lot of things at play, and the main thing, and Kim has stressed from the beginning, she wants transparency. She wants it out with the community. She wants everyone to be involved. So we're trying to do this as transparent and open as possible, getting all the information so we are all on the same page. And if that is enough, Kim, Councilor Holmes, if you'd like to take it away.
All right, thank you, Mayor. I think you gave a very nice overview of kind of the objective of this whole exploration. So I'll just give you a little review of the information, the packet of information that's before you all tonight. And I hope for those residents who took the time to join us this evening, I hope there are some copies available for you and you're able to take those home and read through it. I hope it will answer a lot of questions that may have come to mind as we've begun exploring this, and may answer some questions that you may still have this evening. So on February 1st, I presented the first portion of this packet to council and we walked through it. They covered a range of questions that the sheriff answered that covered topics such as estimated costs, the level of service that we would be wanting to explore for the community. As the mayor stated, we're looking at 24/7 coverage with two officers on duty. And I do just want to note that, this is a level of service that I don't think this community has seen in over a decade. So what we are really trying to do is make sure that we are getting the level of public service that we think the community wants and find a sustainable funding mechanism for that. So at the end of the review of that information, council did determine that further exploration was warranted. So we went ahead and I launched that second phase of discovery. What that comprised was a number of inquiries, a meeting with the city. Carol, thank you for your time being there this evening. Carol was really the cornerstone of helping to assemble some information on the city side around specific costs. Larry was at the meeting, Brian Jensen was at the meeting, Lieutenant Flewellen, the mayor, and Council President Miller as well. We also had a similar meeting with the sheriff, Larry Lehman, city manager, the mayor, Council President Miller, and myself, again, reviewing the questions that we sent to him for phase 2 that's contained in your packet, and then also asking for information relating to the certain cost items that you see on this spreadsheet. I worked with both parties to identify similar cost items so we could do that side-by-side comparison, which council had requested at the last meeting. I also took the step of reaching out to a couple of cities that do have contracted services to better understand the structure of those contracts, what their experiences have been, and you'll find those in the appendices as well. So that's really what you'll see before you. So the new information effectively starts on page 25 of that packet, and kind of like we did the last time, unless someone from council has a different recommendation, what I would suggest is that we walk through kind of each new topic area. And just a summary here. So the topic areas that we cover in phase 2 is relate to the treatment of, equipment, transfer of equipment, and additional delivery of services, some follow-up questions relating to staffing, questions relating to community engagement, community visibility and branding, use of technology for public safety, focus on public safety priorities, and interagency engagement relating to public safety issues. So I guess first I will ask, do any counselors have initial questions before we dive into certain topic areas, or does anyone have a preference if we start with maybe the cost sheet or the questions?
Kim, if I may interrupt for just a second, are these packets available for our audience in the back there? Okay, and this is all the information that council has is also contained in the packets. We don't have any additional information that we're looking through here that's not in the council packets. Is that correct? Okay, and the council packets are also available on the City of Scappoose website under City Council, correct, in a PDF format. So if anybody online wants to go to the City of Scappoose website and click on City Council and look at the packet that is for tonight's meeting, they can follow along with any of this information as well.
Great.
And Kim, do you have the packet with the red numbers at the bottom too, pages?
I don't, unfortunately. I just have a copy of, the packet. So the page numbers that I'll be referencing are in the top right corner
Okay.
of the discovery packet. All right. Well, if there's no preference as to whether we start with the questions from the sheriff or the cost sheet, I'll go ahead and we can dive through the questions here. So I'm going to largely skip through the follow-up questions from the phase 1 discovery. I think they're fairly self-explanatory unless there's anything that someone has a particular question around or a point that anyone wants to raise on those before we dive into the new questions.
So they would be read in the phase 1 discovery portion?
Yep.
Phase-
Well, everything on page 25 forward is phase 2, I think is the best way to explain it, right?
Okay.
Correct. So in the new information, beginning on page 25, we've got 2 sets of questions. The first set of questions they were follow-up questions from the first phase of discovery, seeking some additional clarification. That runs from page 25 through 32. And then we had an entirely new set of questions that went to the sheriff that starts on page 33.
That's where you will begin.
That's where I will begin.
Okay.
All right. So relating to equipment and services, and this kind of gets at some of the cost estimates. We wanted to better understand the treatment of the equipment that we could carry over into a contract, and how we would treat areas where we might need to be purchasing new equipment, because we either needed to make sure that the equipment synced with what CCSO is currently using, or we may need some updated equipment for that. So Sheriff confirmed that the assets that we have and would be willing to transfer over to CCSO, that we could go ahead and make that transfer to help offset some of those costs. For vehicles, and you'll see that in the cost sheet here, there is a slight difference in terms of the vehicles. The city of Scappoose purchases vehicles. The county actually leases vehicles. So you will see that lease vehicle estimate rented, or sorry, the leased vehicle estimate reflected. The county contract with their officers does afford a vehicle for each officer to take home. And so there is, it would be anticipated that they would need to lease a few additional vehicles. So that's what's reflected in that cost sheet there. Then we asked about additional services that CCSO offers, such as, there is a canine on within the department there. If that canine were used within the city, would we be charged additionally for that? If we needed detectives to be put on certain cases, and the sheriff confirmed that we would not be charged for some of those additional services, which the sheriff, they're currently lending to us as needed anyway. And I guess I should also just make a clarifying point here. I did invite the sheriff to join us today, and he did intend to join us. And he did give me permission to discuss why he is not able to join us. He actually had a doctor's appointment that fell much later in the day, so he could get treatment for an injury that he had sustained, unfortunately, back in December, when they were working to apprehend the murder suspect in December. So he was not able to join us today, but I will go ahead and capture any questions that we have for him and forward those on to him. So do keep that in mind. Okay, so any questions on equipment or services? The answer's there.
So I have a Counselor Holmes, Counselor Jacobs, just trying to wrap my head around like our capital equipment. So if I'm understanding, all of our equipment becomes CCSOs, like we're just going to give it to them. Why would we just give it to them? Why wouldn't we have them buy it from us? That way they're responsible for maintaining it. Like it takes any type of ownership responsibility out of our hands. Like, because if they're going to share the cars, someone wrecks one of our cars. This also will, I know we're going to talk about branding. We have a perspective on branding. He has a perspective on branding. Of our cars is co-branded and wrecked. Like I don't want to have any school responsibility for that.
Yeah, and my understanding is under the terms of the contract, when we transferred those assets over to the county, we would not have responsibility for that. So we would also write into the term of the contract that as the years of the contract go by, those assets would depreciate, right? And there would be a certain point at which there would be really no remaining value in them. So if we were to pull out of the contract, right, there really would be nothing to take back with us. If we were to say terminate the contract after a year, we felt the level of service that we were requesting was not being adequately provided. We would be able to terminate that contract and regain those assets, that were still serviceable pieces of equipment.
Kim, I can comment on that, being involved with the meetings and hearing the explanation. So the reason for the transfer of the equipment is CCSO would become the owners of that equipment outright. And just a tidbit here is that the agreement would indemnify us. They would be indemnifying us. But those assets they would fully own those. And the reason for that is because in theory, it would lower the cost of city because the sheriff's office is not having to go buy those things new. And then that becomes an expense that's just charged right back to us. And so in theory, it makes more sense that our assets get transferred to them. They become the owners, and therefore we don't have that added expense in the contract.
And what is the rough years that a car lasts?
4 or 5. It
Yeah, I
really
think-
depends.
Wasn't very long.
Yeah, I think we heard 4 or 5 years from both the city and the county.
That way they lease their cars and just, they lease their cars and then we buy them. So have we thought about, is that a better option? I don't know.
That's a
It's
question that we can pose for the
it's a-
sheriff, yeah.
It's
Sure.
a lease to own arrangement, and so they pay, lesser amounts over a longer duration because that's what fits better for their budget. As we're traditionally, the city has, at least in the last few years, has bought the cars outright. And so, there's theories, just like if somebody goes buys a new car, there's a lease option or there's a buy outright option. So it kind of just depends on what your preference is and what you can afford and what's being offered at that time. And then also all the equipment upfitting and everything gets wrapped into one lease payment. So all the aftermarket emergency equipment that gets installed, they don't have to buy that out of pocket either, which can be excess of $40,000 in of itself. So they're paying one lease fee for basically a new totally equipped police car.
I remember Alex saying that we're kind of rotating purchases of vehicles every year because of the cost, right?
Yeah, and you will see that reflected in the city's numbers. And yeah, Carol, please feel free to chime in for any clarification on the city numbers. So we actually do have some money budgeted for new vehicles as we grow our own police department and add additional officers. We will be adding vehicles over the next budget cycle and then likely the following budget cycle as well.
I'll just chime in.
Does it show that us buying or local police buying was 115,000, but theirs was roughly estimated at 76,000 for a new vehicle?
I think that's the difference between purchase and lease, right? As President Council Miller was talking about, kind of spreading
I
those
assume
costs.
my microphone is on, okay? We're very early in the budget process right now. But I know Brian and I have been working on this budget, and we didn't have a car budgeted this year. Kind of got a half a car. We're kind of trying to build up, and obviously we're trying to negotiations and everything else we got going. We're trying to things as inexpensive as we could this year. But my understanding, Kim, of your spreadsheet was that theirs were like 38 lease, I believe.
Well, it's 19,000 a year. It looks
Yeah.
like for 4 years, that's 76,000. Then they turn it in.
Oh, no.
They get value for it.
They're leased to own.
But then it's $76,000
Yeah,
to buy it. Ours is 115.
that doesn't make a lot of sense to me
I mean,
from
that's
a lease.
not a big difference.
perspective. Ours are really not 115. Brian corrected me. That was a number that I had. And he said, looks like we're running closer to 85, 90, like that.
I would assume if they're Durango fully outfitted is 75,000. Ours would be less or equal.
Probably
It'd be a lot more.
Yeah, and I'll ask for clarification on that because my interpretation of that was that he'd estimated that 76,000 based on the additional annual lease costs rather than outright purchase costs. So we can get some more clarification around that. And if Carol, you guys have some tighter estimates on what you anticipate budgeting for purchase in the next year, we can make that adjustment.
Very
Okay.
early in the budget process right now, so, yeah.
Yeah,
Another
best
question to
estimates.
ask too is if they're including the computers and the radios in the cars, because those in of themselves, the radios can run about 8,000 each and the computers can run about 5,000. So some cities and counties include that in a build, as where others include like a computer in the IT budget. And sometimes radios are also included in the IT budget also. So there might be, Capus might be considering the computer and the radio as part of the build as well.
And we generally have been capitalizing all of that with vehicle. I can get you certainly the cost on last vehicle that we purchased. That would be reasonable. I think it was around 23 for the setups, which would include the radio, the IT. And I believe it was around 60 something. I don't know if there were other costs with the graphics that maybe I didn't have in my numbers. I can pull those together for you.
Okay.
Kind of on that as well, by looking at the numbers, I mean, vehicle maintenance, we budgeted 78,000, potentially 100,000, where theirs is 30,000. So being a big difference there.
That was another one that I know I kind of honed in on. And when Brian and I were working on the budget, we cut that way back. With our new vehicles, we're sitting right now at about 30,000 this year for maintenance. We're 3/4 of the way through the year. So that budget last year was high, knowing that we had old vehicles. We didn't know how much it was going to be. So obviously we can't spend money if we don't have it budgeted. So we try and leave ourselves enough buffer, make sure that we have funds to.
Yeah, so Carol, the only thing that I would ask for that too is that we consider how low our staffing has been. Obviously, the more miles, the more the car's being used, the more maintenance is going to occur. So there's a lot of collateral considerations that go along with that. And I'm assuming that you're going to do that. I just want to throw that out there.
I agree. And Brian had also mentioned that in the old days, they sat and let the cars run all night and all day or whenever they were on duty. And we don't do that anymore because he had that stop. So that's also has a lot less wear and tear on the vehicle. So we'll cut some maintenance costs.
All right.
Anything else you wanted to cover?
Yeah, so just moving through the second section here, staffing. I do think the important takeaway here is that, council and the public understand that, neither of these options, either, maintaining our own police department or going with CCSO is going to overnight give us the 24/7, the staffing for us to reach that level of service that we're ultimately seeking. It will take time for both agencies to build up their staff. And so what you'll see in section 2 here is, Sheriff Pixley talking about the number of open positions that they have and kind of a timeline for filling the gap on some of those. I think, Brian Jensen also provided some projections of, how we might be scaling up the police department ourselves. And we're looking at hiring, hopefully achieving 8 patrol officers in the next budget cycle, and then hoping to achieve the level of 10 patrol officers in the following budget cycle. So looking at
That's currently what I have calculated for the budget this year.
So 8 for this year's budget.
Patrol officers.
And right now we have how many on payroll?
Payroll?
You can speak
Oh.
up. This would be the
We
way
have an
to go.
opening for one, like right now, we're budgeted for 8, correct?
That is correct. Right now we have, I believe, 6 patrol officer levels. When it comes down to it.
Those are staffed positions. I mean, those are.
Yes, that's also include one of our recent graduates from last Friday, Jacob McFarland.
Okay, and how many do we have in training that are still with an FTO?
LB2 right now, sir.
Okay, yeah.
Including our new officer that graduated on Friday.
That's in the 6th, though. They're.
Yes.
And we have an opening for 1 at this time, like an actual posting or a 1. Another one potentially soon.
I don't know there's actually been posting yet at this time, Mayor. I don't believe that there has been, sir.
All right. One additional thing I want to point out in this section, concerns that, I've heard through this exploration is, we don't want to have a situation where, Scappoose just gets all the new officers. And we also don't want to have a situation where, we might have officers serving for a duration of time and say that period of time is up and then, everyone rotates out and we would get a whole new set of officers to the community. And there really are ways to mitigate both of those problems in the way that you structure a contract. And this is something that I spoke with the 2 communities, both Happy Valley and the city of Cornelius, about how they structure that. Both of them have a stipulation in there that you can't put a new officer into the community, that they have to have some years of service. So you're, guaranteeing that you get experienced officers working within your community. And then we could also stagger, the terms of service within the community. And, certainly I think there's been the concern expressed that officers, currently serving within Scappoose would maybe have a change of job duty. And that's something that we could also stipulate is that the officers currently serving in Scappoose could remain in Scappoose, choose to remain in Scappoose for that first term as well. So there is some discussion of that in this section, and then you'll also see discussion of that in the 2 appendices.
If I can, this is Lieutenant Flood again. So I misspoke. It's actually 5, not 6 together, staff. So 5.
Budget, we had 8. I mean, we budgeted for 8. And so that money at the end of the year, if it wasn't spent on, we only had 5 and it wasn't spent, just goes back in. I mean, can
It's
you,
being spent, well,
yeah,
until now, at least, 2 of those officers have been paid. There are 2 officers off right now. They've been dismissed and were in court and all kinds of stuff. And so they've been paid up to date. One of them was just taken off the payroll about a month ago, I think it was, and we're working on the other one. So even though we have 5, like you're mentioning, we budgeted for 8, and 2 of those are off, getting paid, and the other one we have a vacancy.
but
Make sense?
10 gives us what we think with the scheduled ability to have 2 on at all shifts with 10 patrol officers.
I don't believe that is the case. I think my understanding is that you could have 24 coverage, but not necessarily 2 officers at all times. And I understand that takes 12.
We'll still have, he's correct, it'll be 12. Part of that supplementation will be 2 sergeants we had available covering to add additional 2, Mayor. That makes sense.
So 24/7 would be 1 on and 1 on call at all times.
Can we back up for a second? I want to clarify something.
Yes.
Go ahead.
No, so I'm just talking about actually physically being on. 10 will have capability to do that when it comes down to having 2 officers for roughly our 3 different shifts that we have. But then sergeants will have to supplement as well.
So
at the time.
I just want to clarify though, that if we count sergeants, that'd be 12. And with 12, including the 2 sergeants, we would have 24/7, 365 with 2 on at all times.
Right, course vacation and sick and everything we can.
Yeah, got it.
Council president.
10 patrol, 2 sergeants and a lieutenant get you there.
With that, I'm just, you're talking about regular patrol, that'd be 12 officers altogether. If you don't want to include a sergeant, so that makes sense.
Yeah, and I don't think we're saying 10, like literally 10 officers. We're saying that we want 2 uniform, because, we want an officer to have cover. It's a safety issue and it's a recruiting and retention issue. And preaching to the choir here, but I just, for the record, we, Sergeant can accomplish that same thing too, of course. So we just want to see 2 on at all times in uniform, pulling the city available for calls.
Okay,
All right.
anything else, Kim?
Yep, so just quickly here in community engagement, we did hear from some citizens, that I guess there's contracted services in Clatskanie, which some citizens are, not entirely happy with. So we did ask the sheriff about the nature of that arrangement, and I think you'll see from the sheriff's response that what we are looking at potentially contracting for is quite different than what is structured with the city of Clatskanie. And so I don't think, that's a good direct comparison for us necessarily. I also did want to inquire about the types of complaints that maybe had been lodged against CCSO over the past years from the community, making sure specifically that these were not really relating to the jail. I understand that there's, some sensitivities around, the details of those complaints, but just asked at a high level to talk about, how many complaints, kind of the nature of those complaints and what the resolution of those complaints were. And you'll see that his response in there as well. Community visibility and branding, what you'll see in the appendices from the communities I spoke with, there's also a number of ways to go about how you brand. You can co-brand. Some cities just prefer to entirely maintain their own identity. Some communities, may have just the sheriff's brand. So I think that's really up to, the community to determine if we were to ever get to that point. But obviously the more kind of, unique or well, if we were to change much of the look and feel of the uniforms and the cars, there would obviously be an additional cost that we would incur with that as well. Anything on that?
Oh,
All right. Then some of the other questions, relate to the sheriff's willingness to explore, different types of technology to help with public safety. And so you'll find those that's relating to some spider technology to make sure that, we're able to really kind of see the presence of officers within the community as requested. So we're ensuring we get the level of service that we're contracting for. Others are looking at the potential of, camera systems that would help improve access to information for law enforcement. For public safety priorities, we wanted to ask about speed enforcement. There's been a lot of concern amongst residents about, traffic safety on Highway 30 and enforcement. And, what the sheriff's willingness is to help us with that. That is also something that the cities that have contracted services have noted, that if you have certain priorities for, say, certain code enforcement, that really you emphasize that in the contract to make sure that those expectations are set with both parties. So that's another thing that you can kind of address in contract. Let's see. And then just interagency engagement, obviously, there's been a lot of discussion at the county level around communication systems with 911. This council has passed an ordinance in support for an open RFP process for that. And we simply asked if the sheriff would continue to support that position, which he did affirm. That's also in the appendices. So that's effectively the summary of the questions. And then I guess we can move to costs to see if there are specific questions about how the budgets are presented or any of the cost items or any of the things that might not be reflected in the budget here.
Mayor.
yes, Counselor Jacob.
So first, thank you, Counselor Holmes, for tracking this discovery. I know this is not easy thing to do. With respect to costing, I had some time to just really kind of dive into the spreadsheet. And I think there's some elements that I feel like it's getting there in terms of getting a real dollar figure on what it costs us as a city to have our police force versus what it would cost to outsource. But I think there's some also missing pieces, some spend numbers. Like, for example, when we talk about who manages the police chief, that's the city manager. What's that time and the dollar amount that that individual spends interfacing and doing that administrative work? Any type of legal fees that are associated with our police force that we have to contract out for. So I definitely think if there's a way that we would be able to extract sort of all those other sort of administrative costs, legal costs that are associated, that we have to budget for now. And that would be something that in doing that comparison, we would be able to see like that would be something that would come off of our payroll, off of our bottom line and would be transferred over. If we're going to try to do a true like cost analysis, we should capture those types of elements as well.
I do believe we do transfer. I mean, and that transfers to general fund for insurance, audit, other shared expenses, 110. I think some of that is the city manager and Isaac.
I can explain that.
Yeah.
The city manager, my position, there are a number of positions that relate to the police that the payroll system actually already bills that. I've included that in the spreadsheet and Kim included that also.
Okay.
Under the admin wages, general fund,
And the personnel.
under the personnel section. So those are basically the costs that include the city manager, wages and benefits. And the payroll system does that.
Okay.
The transfer costs, the admin costs that are on the spreadsheet, those of course are city shares. There are some things that are very difficult to cost out. So we've moved a lot of stuff from a budget perspective to make it more transparent. So like the attorney fees, we're charging them to whoever they go to, right? Whereas there are things like insurance for the city, huge cost, and that everybody chips into. So that is one of those shared administrative expenses. Same thing for the software. That is our financial software. So we have a list, and that's actually in. I can get you that information. It's just so every year we go through and split those costs out.
So am I understanding correctly, Carol, when you say like even, so I hear you on the administrative fees, like personnel interacting. The legal fees, that's also baked in here as well? Or do we not have that?
Until last year,
Mhm.
those were all transferred to the general fund and we paid them all. Last year,
Okay.
we made a decision, all the department heads and I, along with Alex, made a decision to take the legal fees and break them out. So basically, if it's land use, it goes to planning.
Gotcha.
If it is police,
So we do have a
So
line
those
item
are
that
there.
we can
we do have some,
capture.
like council things, council expenses, council training that are, but across the board anyways. So those are relatively small costs, but attorney bills are, Larry and I have been spending lots of time on the attorney bills. And they're massive, but they do itemize them.
Do you,
Aren't they right here? They're reflected here, 98,000. That's for the police.
The
are the attorney fees in there somewhere?
attorney fees are not in that.
What's this 98,000?
Attorney fees is a separate line.
Yeah, it is in expenses.
Oh, there it is, attorneys, 98,000. And then
It is in these figures.
attorneys, Columbia County is NA,
Yeah, 0.
Because they have their own attorney.
but there's still a cost. They're gonna pay all their attorney fees.
That's what's in the admin costs, the 10% admin costs that TSOs quoted.
They have a 10%. Up in the personnel section, CSO has an admin cost, 238,000.
Usually that's just the cost to do the contract.
I don't know what that is for sure, so.
In
I tried to
previous,
break down as many of the things that I could easily break down and, you know, because some of these are on the same GL line, but I tried to break them out, try and give you as much transparency.
in the previous discovery, we actually asked if anything related to personnel, labor, litigation, anything related to that would be covered by CCSO under the pricing that they gave us, and they said yes, and that's part of that 10% admin fee that they're charging.
Unless it's already under investigation here now, we handle whatever's being done now, but going forward.
Right, any current personnel issues that we have existing now, the sheriff said is ours to resolve. Not, you can understand that he's not gonna take those over.
Definitely think if we decide to stay local, there are some items on here that we can really address and try to work on. Sure, getting down.
Yeah, but so just kind of further to Counselor Jacobs' question, it was my understanding, you know, as Alex left, just kind of anecdotally, I'd asked, you know, what percentage of her time was spent, you know, working with the police department and that. And I mean, she said there were times it was nearly almost 50%. So under that scenario, you know, if for these communities that have gone to contracting services, it really does kind of free up the city manager to focus on other areas of the city. And that's one of the benefits that they cited. One item that's not reflected on here, and Council President Miller, I don't know if you want to speak to this, but we did inquire to CIS about what the difference in the insurance premium would be for the city if we did not have a police department. And I believe the savings of that was about $68,000 a year. So there would be an additional cost savings that would go.
I would believe that number. I think that's probably fair. Because of the vehicles, no, we just, we've had a couple of accidents. And, you know, so yes, there's a cost.
And their insurance would be less overall because it's a much bigger department with economies of scale. Timmy Sue, you've had your hand up. Would you like to offer a comment?
Yes, hi. I just wanted to clarify, have Councilor Holmes clarify something. She stated back in the beginning when you started this, that the county lends deputies to the city when needed already. But it's my understanding that we have an intergovernmental agreement that the city pays the deputies their overtime rate when they cover, when the police department is unstaffed or doesn't have anybody on duty.
You want to get that, Kim,
Yeah.
or do you want?
Yeah, thank you for that clarification, Timmy Sue. Yeah, I should have been more clear. The county is generous with lending their officers when they're needed to assist a call within our community. And
The
we are charged for
intergovernmental
that.
agreement is when we know we're going to be short, we have to first go to our union and try to get our officers to do overtime. And when we can't, we can then go to the county and request an officer from them. And if they do accept it and take that shift, then we do pay that overtime, but not that takes days or a week or two because you have to foresee somebody being gone and request it. If they just come into the city and help, we're not paying their overtime on a case by case incident.
I can confirm that. I have never seen bill from the county, from CCSO, for time that their deputies spent helping us. It's always been once or twice even.
And Lieutenant can answer how many times you've requested and been given.
That is correct. So when there are coverage gaps I can identify, if I'm alerted, I do put it to the county first, or sorry, to our city. If that's not covered, I give it to the county. There's only been a handful of times during coverage gap, I think the county, which are great counterparts to work with, obviously, have actually assisted with that. So there's been once or twice, you know that for a fact. Usually if it's no coverage, sometimes it's myself who comes in and fill those gaps, or I try to work with other officers and re-engage if I can too. But what you're talking about too as well, county does help us, but we also help our county counterparts too. When they need assistance, we take calls outside the city too as well to help the citizens in general, because law enforcement officers should when it comes down to. So we don't really have a counting game. You're talking about backup and cover units when it comes down to it. So it's a give and take, and treasure relations with our county counterparts, but we both help each other out when it comes down to it. I think it's a good thing that officers do just within profession.
And that intergovernmental agreement, do you feel that it is still warranted? Because we have it going into like June, but going forward, it's good to have that option, correct?
It is.
I mean, as they get further staffed and we get staffed where they might have more people that can help.
That is correct, Mayor. I know county itself is having at sometimes maybe some challenges as well when it comes to coverage, but it is good for me to be able to have to look back on that and use it as another resource or tool to help provide coverage for the community and city when it comes down to it.
Well, and I guess just the final piece of information that I will share is that in the meeting with our staff, Brian Jensen, who's our acting safety director, did raise the concern that, the uncertainty of the investigation, is, it is creating uncertainty within the department, and asked when we might be, working to arrive at a decision on this. And so we talked, and we think, we would like to be able to conclude this investigation one way or another by the May 6th meeting. And so he agreed that, that would be reasonable, and he would communicate that back to the officers. So, really out of respect for our officers, that is the goal, is to get this wrapped up to the best extent possible by May 6th. So I put before you a couple of recommendations. I want to commend our staff. They always do such a nice job with the staff report, and I did my best to emulate. I'm not sure I hit the mark, but I tried to put before you kind of 3 options for consideration. So I think I don't have them right in front of me. I think the last one I present is, just kind of, if council feels that we've learned enough and, continuing to explore contracted services is not the right option for the community at this time, that's certainly an option we can entertain. Another option that I would like to put before you, if we feel that continuing exploration is warranted, I personally feel that the voice of the community is critical in this. We do need to hear from the residents within the Scappoose city limits. Those would be the people who we would be asking to support a levy on this if we were to preserve our police department and found that we could not, sustainably manage that within the means of our own revenue. And so what I would propose is we put together a survey and execute that rather quickly, a very simple survey that just lays out the options. And then another option is that we work with staff to, really come up with a plan for what it would take for us to be able to fund the department. And if we cannot fund the department, what would be the funding gap that we would need to fill with a levy, and what would be some of our levy options as well. There may be other options for us to discuss and consider tonight, but those would be kind of 3 things that I would propose for next steps. And we could do a couple of them in combination. We could say, no, we need more exploration similar to this. Options are yours to discuss.
Can I pipe in?
Yes, please.
I've done running a lot of the numbers. We're very early in the budget process at this point, but I a lot of projecting with potential negotiations with the union. We kind of came up with some estimated numbers, and I've been looking at what we've got as far as the general fund. Our general fund is it's in good shape at this point. We do have reserves, but that's left over from COVID. So we do have a good chance, some good reserves in the general fund. We don't want to fund with general reserves. And I'm kind of looking, and I'm hoping I can talk to, Ty a little bit about how he wants some suggestions he's got communicating, what our general fund is. So I'm looking forward to talking to him about that. But I would feel very comfortable now. We know that we have new houses being developed. The The assessor has given us an estimate of, with the houses that we have kind of in the works now, looking at potentially another almost $90,000 tax revenue, probably 18 months down the road. You know, and we obviously can look at other potential funding mechanisms, but I would be comfortable doing accounting for a lot of years with cities, saying that we could run on reserves for 3 years comfortably, and fund our police department. You know, right now we're so low understaffed that we have extra money, and that's really this last year we've had vacant positions. And, you know, obviously we're going to try and use money we've got, but currently we're budgeting for, you know, more excess of money in our ending fund balance to get us through November tax season. And, you know, I calculated how much money we need, and we don't need that much. So I do believe we have extra reserves that we could, I'd feel comfortable saying we could fund the additional money we need, keep the police here in Scappoose for up to 3 years without putting us in any jeopardy. So, and we are trying to budget very conservatively.
Carol, can I ask a question about that? So the word reserve scares me. So we're funding the increase that we like to see to get 2 officers on at all times using reserve. I want to make sure your definition of reserves is the same as mine. So is reserves actual, it's not recurring income, it's we're going to use reserves and deplete that and then.
And it goes away. That's what I was intending. We have fund balance, general fund. It is larger than most cities do, you know, of our size, certainly. That if that was drawn down some, city would not be in any risk. I've been doing, and one of the charts that I'm going to add to the budget this year is revenue versus expenses. Currently, our revenues in the general fund exceed our expenses and have exceeded our expenses all but 1 year out of the last 10. So that means we're getting more money in than we're spending out. That's for the entire general fund.
So our current budget for the PD right now is a little over 2.8 million. Is that correct?
Yes. Now that obviously is going to, you know, change.
And then the estimation on our cost sheet in our packet is to get 24/7, 365 coverage. So an officers, 2 sergeants, lieutenant, and chief is 3.7 million. So we have enough reserves to cover the gap in between 2.8 million and 3.7.
I'm not confident that I believe that number. I think, yeah, obviously we can come up with other numbers. But I'm trying to think of where 3.7 came from. I'm sorry, I'm looking at the spreadsheet.
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, that's.
Yes, go ahead.
is-
I gotta extend the meeting.
Can I make a motion to extend the meeting past?
A motion to extend the meeting past 9. Any seconds? Second by Counselor San Diego. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor state by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Counselor Holmes?
It's $1 million.
Yeah, no, I was just,
We don't have $1 million.
Sure.
That's when it comes right down to it.
Okay, so
1.8 to 3.7, we do not have.
Okay. So we don't have it.
We don't have that much.
Isaac have something?
Yeah, I'm not comfortable that those numbers are correct.
I do just want to note, Carol, these are the numbers that have been presented and were reviewed in the city meeting. If you guys would like to offer information to adjust these numbers that reflect actual costs, we can talk about that. But I do want to understand kind of what those, you know, what's behind that change from the initial number that was provided.
Isaac has something to help.
Just a couple of quick clarifications on a couple of points. So to be very specific, the amount of times we've had the sheriff's office here to help us with that coverage shift is twice. That happened just before Christmas. It has never happened again. Second point on that is that they are running mandatory overtime to cover shifts right now. So that's one more data point to think about as we go into this. And the last thing is a cost that is not in here, and it often gets left out of these things, and that's the cost to manage the contract. So in here, on the sheriff's line item side, there's not an admin cost to manage the contract, develop it, negotiate it. So somebody at the city does have to do that. And I don't know that it's going to change your calculus, but it should be included because that will take staff time to do that. And if we want any kind of back and forth management with them, that will incur a cost, and that's often left out. And that's really common with these things.
Mayor,
Yes, Councilor
can I?
Waiting.
Yep. I'd like to take a minute. I think we've focused so much on the financial aspect. I think we need to look at a different perspective, and I've gathered some information my own that I think would be helpful. So first, I'd like to say that I have nothing but respect for Columbia County Sheriff's Office. They do tremendous work keeping our community safe. Thank you, Councilor Holmes and Miller, for putting in all this work, exploring this option. So as many of you guys know, I'm a college professor, data scientist, data analyst for the county. I dissect every issue, especially something with the potential consequences as this pretty deeply. So, I think we all know that this decision would be very difficult to ever reverse. And so I focused on understanding the potential consequences of contracting beyond just the financial aspect of it. And I'll start by saying I believe that more direct feedback from the Scappoose Police Department officers and staff should have been included in the beginning of this process. I think it's fair to say that they are the real experts on public safety and law enforcement in Scappoose, and their thoughts on how to best keep our local community safe should be highly valued. Over the past 2 weeks, I interviewed over half of the Scappoose Police Department. I want to highlight a few important issues related to this decision. So first, the main points proposed for contracting out is that it would allow the city to achieve 24/7 coverage. We've talked about this plenty, and that we potentially could do it cheaper. I don't discount the significant amount of work that was put in the financial comparisons. However, I think it's clear just in the past hour with all of these back and forths with the numbers, there's a lot more that would need to be done to understand the actual financial comparisons. It's just, there's too much uncertainty to put too much weight on how much the contracting would save us at the end. In addressing the 24/7 coverage, there, to be honest, wasn't one officer or staff that I interviewed that say that 2 officers in Scappoose 24/7 should be the priority. Statistically, there are just so few calls in the middle of the night, and it's just not the best use of resources, especially limited resources. All the feedback I received centered around the actual priority being ensuring that we are fully staffed during the hours that there are a high call volume, from the morning to the late evening. It should also be stated once again, this keeps coming up, that we already do have 24/7 coverage as the Columbia County Sheriff's Office does provide service during gaps, Scappoose staffing. Another important significant consequence of this decision is really the implications of what does it mean if we lose control over our local police department. I have no doubt that the Columbia County Sheriff's Office would do an effective job serving Scappoose, but we have to talk about the potential trade-offs when a city is served by an outside organization that has to adhere to their own important priorities, as they should. Some of the feedback I received around losing local control, both from city staff, police department, and the community itself, is the potential effect of losing some of our officers that prefer the type of policing that is done at the city level compared to the county level, a loss of community involvement and engagement with the police, challenges with the city, community, and schools providing the same level of involvement and input. So for example, in the report, it mentioned Clatskanie meets quarterly with the chief. So 4 times a year, in my mind, is not significant local impact or local input. I recently met with the county director of emergency management and asked for his feedback on any challenges that contracting out would create. He stated that the local police chief and fire chief are the main and most important point of contact for local communities in emergency response. Losing our main connection for coordinating an emergency response is a significant concern that we should consider. I've worked for federal government, state government, still work for the county government, now the city government. And I believe a lot of people in this room and out in the community would agree when I say local communities generally know what's best for them. I also am a little leery of the comparison cities that have worked out at successfully contracting. I think it's very hard to compare like Happy Valley and Wilsonville, who contracted in the 70s or 90s when they were a fraction of the size that they are now, It's all that they really know. And they also have the benefit of a pretty high resource county sheriff's office that grew in relation to those cities. Lastly, I do believe that a lot of this decision in particular, I think, and it's come up today already, we're trying to correct issues that were largely in the past with turnover and bad leadership and things like that. So while Scappoose does have a recent history of officer and leadership turnover, the current city council shouldn't make drastic decisions due to the past discretions and missteps of former leadership. We truly have a unique opportunity in front of us. It's one of the first times that we've ever had the opportunity in the same time frame to hire both a city manager and a chief of police. I believe in this council. I believe we can work together to bring in a strong city manager and a highly qualified police chief, build on the great core of officers that we have and the amazing lieutenant as well. I'm wrapping up. The points that I've brought up are just a few of the many potential consequences of this decision. And I believe that most would agree that all these reasons potentially far outweigh the potential cost savings that this would create. I'll finish by saying I believe in our current Scappoose Police Department. I believe in our great city staff. I believe that this current city council can support manageable and responsible growth of our police department to best suit the needs of Scappoose now and into the future.
Thank you. One question that had come up earlier, and we had talked about how much time our city manager took with the police. Larry, as 30, 40 years of city manager experience, how much of your time was spent when you had a good police chief working and overseeing and running the police department?
Very little. Very honestly, I got 35 years experience as a manager in 3 different cities with police departments. And I would say less than 10%. I'm talking about police departments that we did not have nearly the difficulty we've had here. Since I went into Scappoose, it's probably 50%. But historically, I would say close to 10, almost if that.
Just as important, Joel said, it's important to hire a really good city manager. It's really important for us to hire a really good police chief that work together so they don't have to work together. I mean, the city manager, police chief can run the department. So it would be really important. We, pretty new, have only seen maybe one chief, and so we haven't really seen it in action. So yeah, so I think if we do get that really good chief in there, then maybe it would free up time for our city manager to work on city manager.
Can I just say one more thing? I want to clarify a couple of numbers. Yes, I apologize. I was looking at the lower number. But I can tell you at this point, and again, it's still early in the budget process, but I've got our preliminary budget. It has 8 full officers. We've cut back a lot of the costs. Brian's helped with that. But right now we're sitting at the police game just under $3 million. 8 total. So we know we can't get to all of those numbers here. It's just not reality. You can't hire good people necessarily that quickly. Because we want to get the right people in. So we know there's going to be.
Anybody have anything else? I mean, are we ready to kind of look and talk about maybe next steps? What are we thinking? I mean, I really appreciate, this is a lot of work. Councilor Holmes did put a lot of work in for the last several months. And as a volunteer trying to do your own job and you're out of state today, this is a lot of work. And so we really appreciate all that information. And so me personally, this is filling me out and I'm willing to listen, but I'm at a stage where we've got a lot of information here. To me, the numbers aren't all end all be all. I'd like to look at them and maybe look a little deeper. I like to look at, all the contract information, talking to some of these counties. But I really do, if another step is warranted, my step to me would be, and maybe starting on Facebook or at the town meeting, is I want to find out from our local citizens, how important is a local police department to you? And just get a sense of how important that is. And then again, and how important is 24/7 police coverage to you where we have two on at all times? And if that means through a CCSO, is that more important, having the 24/7? Because I do believe if we do say local, we can get there. It's going to take some creative budgeting and maybe some time and looking at levies potentially. And so that was the other question is if locally we decide 24/7 coverage is important and local is important, are you willing to pay if we do a very smart levy that pays for an extra officer or two? And are you willing to pay for it? That's kind of where I'm right now. But I'm willing to listen to see what others think.
Mr. Mayor? So I am in agreement with that. We should be going out to the public. We should be going out to citizens within city limits, first and foremost. Secondarily, from there, we need to be very clear and crisp in terms of what we're asking. Andrew, since you are a data scientist, and this is kind of an area of expertise, the question I have for you would be, what could a potential time frame look like in order for us to ask those who are within city limits, because those are the taxpayers, and survey them? How soon would we be able to get something up, put out, and then be able to get data back so that we can look at it? Is it something we can do in 30 days, start to finish? How much time will we need? And is it even feasible to be able to do it within those, to survey the people within city limits?
Yeah, I'm happy to help design the questions, but to be honest, Isaac is going to have the most local knowledge because he's done a number of surveys and he knows response rates and timelines.
Yeah.
I do believe local businesses, if you're owning businesses and operating them, you're just as important.
So we already have a mailing list for every address in the city. We put this together about a year and a half ago. We sent out another survey to everybody. So we already have that existing. I believe it cost around $3,000 or $4,000 to run it. That was in the water bill. That said, we could do another mailer. Depends on how fast we get questions together.
Okay.
And depends on how long you want to open. Typically, historically, we've left things open for about a month. If you want to do a 2-week open period, that gives us like week run up, 2 weeks open, put on Facebook and all the things. We won't be able to get it in the newsletter, most likely. I'm a little blanking on the time. Probably not if we want a week to crunch the data and get you numbers before.
You do a
May.
separate mailing.
We'd have to do a separate
Like
mailer.
information back before enough time for us.
Yeah, so we would need a week ahead of time and a week after bare minimum. We can probably do it a couple thousand, be about right. And last time we did it, I think we got a pretty representative sample size, which was actually pretty good for us. Usually we get about 100 to 200 responses.
We don't have emails for everybody within city limits and send it out, have it back tomorrow. Nancy Johnson will have the list.
Yeah.
Those are mailing addresses for those that live inside the city. Doesn't include the businesses.
I believe so. I can make sure it includes businesses and apartments.
We've got all the water bill.
Right, but apartments don't get that. So we would make sure those are included. So yeah, it was based on the water bill. One of them there was a separate one we did just based on geography. We just reran it. So we can check and make sure if you want to go that route that it includes as many folks as we can include. So
Is there any other option that you guys could get enough information that you'd trust in other than that? That we could do, us hitting the pavement, getting out, all town meeting. That's a lot in such a short time, but is there any other way?
I think it's important for us to hear from our constituents. I also think it's very important, though, that we also model out, we're being transparent, and what does our current service look like? Because I have heard from multiple constituents that they would like more. I know you heard more on the campaign trail. I know Counselor Holmes heard more on the campaign trail. So I think we need to educate what we currently have. And if we're good with that, and here's what that costs us, great. If we want more, this is what it would cost us.
You think you
But
could come out with 3 or 4 simple questions that would give us the information we need?
Well, I think we have to look to Andrew for that. But I also, what I think it's really important to say is though, as well as comment on the funding. I think it's a slippery slope if we start saying levies because it's temporary. It's a moment in time that you will have that money, and then what? So I think we have to be very realistic in terms of what we can afford. And if the goal is 24/7, great. But if our SDCs and all of the additional income that comes isn't there, which doesn't seem like it is, or it will be, which is okay. This is the type of police force we will have. This is what we can afford, and we have to be comfortable with it.
Well, I also
We
don't.
can't spend SDCs, please. There are a number of things we cannot spend.
Correct. I'm just saying with all the money that comes in, we only have so much. When it can only be allocated to certain areas. Can't just all of a sudden say, we're going to raise everyone's property taxes and all that money is going to go straight to the police department to fund 24/7 police for Scappoose. It doesn't work that way.
Restricted.
If we had,
I thought that we had accurate numbers already, so for me, I'm concerned that we don't have accurate numbers and we need to get accurate numbers because that's probably going to inform some of the wording, some of the questions that go out to the public. So if you ask me, I think we need to drill down on the numbers and make sure that those are accurate. And then the survey, but the survey questions are inherently going to include data that comes from the numbers.
I think that makes it incredibly tough to do that in a week.
Yeah.
Especially given that it's 9:20 and those questions are really key on surveying. How you design them, what kind of a scale you use, is it open-ended? It matters a lot.
if we did have something by Wednesday next week, it could possibly make the newsletter, maybe. We wouldn't get it back till the end of
That takes
April.
weeks to get out in the bills. Not
I-
sure.
Again, I do agree. I mean, to me, that question wouldn't include numbers. It'd be more, how important is a local police department? And then once we determine that, then we can go into the numbers of what a local police department costs and what can we do and can we afford it? If you're gonna try to put this all out to everybody in a couple of weeks with all these numbers and look how much savings you can have, that's pretty in-depth.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would imagine, if we were to take the step of surveying, we present certain scenarios, right? We maintain our police department, given the resources that we have, and that may mean not achieving 24/7 coverage. The other scenario is, we want to maintain our police department 24/7 coverage at all cost is a priority, even if it means a levy. Have that as a selection. Or, no, I want to, it would be important for me to achieve 24/7 coverage, the most efficient way. And I'm good with, contracting with the sheriff's department. So we give people some very discrete options. And say, what is your preference? What are you most comfortable with? Or maybe kind of prioritize 1 and 2, preference 1 and 2. And ensure that those scenarios are not overlapping, right? They're all very discrete choices. And I think that would give this council some direction. Yes, the timing is going to be difficult to achieve that by May 6th. So if, we want to acknowledge that that might not be a realistic timeline, so that can be communicated back to the police department, I think that's a reasonable step as well. I very much want to see, Carol, if you think the numbers that are reflected in the spreadsheet are not accurate, certainly there's an opportunity. Please go ahead and revise them further so that they accurately reflect kind of what you think we've got budgeted for this year. But I really do want to see for 5 years, because this is not a decision that I think this community wants to revisit within 5 years. And I think if we take the step of hiring a police chief, we want to assure them the opportunity to really grow the department and all of our officers as well. So I want to make sure that we can sustainably fund this department for at least 5 years.
Do you feel that we could have some questions and updated budgets by Saturday's meeting? And that, yeah, this Saturday's meeting, that we could just have on the table. We might not be able to answer a lot of, but we can ask those questions. And then try to get it out in the newsletters. And
I can get you the numbers Saturday by
would that be something you'd like to attempt?
I can draft some questions. I would certainly like Counselor LaFran's help.
Yeah, the two of you
With
could.
his experience with, doing research and that. So yeah, Counselor LaFrance, I can work with you to draft up some questions, but then I think we also have to ensure the quality of the data. If we're having people fill things back at the town hall, we have to have some way of capturing their information to verify that they live within the city or operate a business within the city, are somehow part of the tax base that would be shouldering the burden if we did have to raise some additional revenues.
We should have some type of documentation or survey actually they need to fill out there. So we have documentation.
If we have the questions and we can ask, I mean, I'm going to trust if I say city of residence and, Scappoose, I'm going to trust that they're being honest.
I think I almost feel like ask them to put their name and address.
Yeah.
This is not something anybody's gonna care about.
I
Anonymous. That's kind of my thought.
disagree. That's historically a way to get lower turnout. The way we typically do is we ask if they live in the city of Scappoose. That is one of the benefits of the mailer to the residences, is you are controlling where that goes.
I don't mind taking the information from people outside the city, but I want to know where they are.
We controlled for that. The last survey we
Yeah.
did we controlled for that. We removed everybody.
If you guys have some recommendations, those kind of questions that you had just mentioned, Kim, if we could have those, be happy to try to get it out. See what we can have, obviously, in person by the next meeting, by April 15th.
Sure.
Yes.
Can I make a suggestion on 2 questions I think might be valuable? I feel like from looking at the discussion on council, there's 2 values in tension. One of them is 24/7 coverage, and one is a police department that is in the city or out of the city. And I think those are 2 different value decisions, because you can have a police department in the city that's not 24 or 24 and vice versa. And I would ask that while you're considering writing questions, Councilor Holmes, you potentially ask both questions. Do you want how in favor are you of 24/7 coverage, and how in favor are you of one policing or the other? And not because I'm trying to sway the discussion, but because I think that those 2 values here are the ones that are in conflict. And they're not the same value. I think that might be useful, if not now, maybe in the future, to where we can look at this regardless of how we go forward, and maybe that sentiment changes and helps a future council make a decision, or a future city make a decision.
Can I say
And if I
something?
could,
Yeah.
one of the questions that were asked, like, when you want to compare officers and so forth, we got to remember that we are operating on almost 40% less officers right now than we're budgeted for. So the public right now, we have 5 officers out there, and that's it. Well, we budgeted for 8. I mean, that's almost doubling the amount if we get filled back up. So it makes a lot of difference on how they're, how the public will perceive them. There'll be just a lot more face time.
If we can get there, and it's tough everywhere. Everybody's looking for officers, and how are we going to hire 3 right away and have them all and a chief and have them already be through training? I mean, it's going to take time
It's gonna take time.
for us or county to get up to speed. I mean, I think we know that. Councilor Santiago?
I just want to, and just my part is that also keep in mind that I know that this has been brought up before, increase of pay to attract more quality of candidate. And so we need to put that into play of our budget and our money as well. If we want to keep it in-house, and we do have to consider increase in pay and a quality chief. I have been part of the chiefs, and we've, in the last couple of times, we haven't gotten our number 1 choice, unfortunately, in that process. And so how are we going to qualify a great chief? Is it by pay? Is it by other benefits? Is it by thinking outside the box? And so we need to consider those options too, and put that in as as a budget. Also, I did like, Councilor Friends did bring up a great point, is not only serving the public, which obviously I do agree, but also the police department, our current officers. And I would love to hear, it doesn't have to be, you don't have to, but honestly, if they feel comfortable, I would love to know what their thoughts and without them feeling that they're going to be remanded or anything like that about it, or what their opinion is. And unfortunately, I would have wanted more true numbers by now, but I guess, so I am in favor of that we should survey residents and find out their thoughts and how important.
And if I could add, so you made a mistake by saying the officers need more money when
Yeah.
you're sitting right here.
Yes.
Uh,
No,
I would like to say though, we're in negotiations right now with the union, and to date, doing going very well. We have a lot of goals involved there that I think we're going to find answers to. So I think within by the time you decide, whatever you decide, it's up to you. If we decide to stay with Scappoose, we will be prepared to come with a contract that the officers will like, and it'll be parts of it that you're gonna like. And we're working towards that.
win-win.
Well, they win more, but we'll try.
I mean, I hope with the issues of retention and being able to hire laterals. I mean, I think that's what, when we decide to stay a local police department, we need to address what have the issues been. And we'll address those. If it's been pay because we can't get laterals or we can't retain them because they can go elsewhere, we're gonna address those issues.
That's the goal.
We have unknowns though too with what we could potentially get for a chief, because surmise it to say is that we thought we were hiring great chiefs in the past too, and that didn't turn out the way that we thought it was. So the way that things have been going is not sustainable, and it's costing the city a ton of money.
And so we
And it's not just
identified,
costing the money, it's causing us coverage. Like, we literally don't have police officers out on patrol, which is a primary core function of the city government. So there's been huge ramifications to the way that things have been ran in the past that are not sustainable.
yes, go ahead, please.
I don't know how out of turn this is, but I am going to step up because I don't know that LT is going to advocate for himself. So I'll just say this real quick thing that, yes, our department is not in shambles. It's really hard to get a baseline. And LT has been doing an amazing job of that, asking department wide, what do we've got, trying to get true numbers for the council. I don't know that it's even possible to get true numbers for this police department. We as officers, I know, have been going around and around on the 24/7 on. Does that look like true numbers of what it's going to take? There's debate among us as to what do we want. So I'd like the council keep that in mind, that true numbers are very difficult to get. And the only reason I'm stepping up here is because I don't know that LT is going to advocate for himself on that, because he's been doing a good job.
Thank you.
Commissioner Police Department, by the way.
Yeah, that's kind of my dilemma, the questions we ask. I mean, there's so many and you're trying to get just the right ones, because I do see it as local police department that may not get to 24/7. Is that what the city, you know, if it's within the budgets, or we can add a little bit? Is that what they want? So to me, it's like, do we want to stick with the local police department and we'll work towards something, we'll determine what that is? Or do we go with the Columbia County because of the issues we've had, let them take care of it? We can get to probably 24/7 and see the numbers. But I mean, those are the kind of the questions that I'm going back and forth on. And I'm thinking of this as for our citizens. We're doing our due diligence. We're hearing from a few. I want to hear from more, just to make sure that we're giving them all a voice and that I'm not overlooking somebody because they're out there being quiet. But I want to hear from all of our citizens.
And I think goes back to our original goal too, is making sure that when somebody in the city calls 911, there is an officer on duty to respond. And if it's a violent call, they're going to sit around the corner and wait for cover. So that's where the second officer needs to come into play. So I put myself in the shoes of somebody that's calling 911 because they have Bergen Progress and they're occupied in their house at night at 3 a.m. I'm not going to have anybody to respond as it stands right now.
And
So whatever we end up doing, I just hope that we can get 24/7 coverage 365. And it's nice that we don't have the call volume right now during those hours it only takes one time and one person getting killed when we didn't have anybody on duty to cause an outrage. So I think our priority is very authentic in that we want to make sure that the people in this community are safe and that there is a reasonable response time to emergencies. The only way that we're going to be able to do that is to assure that we have on-duty officers in this city.
And I think starting this, my whole thing was really thinking of the officers, because I think the officers we have now are good officers. I wanted to protect and help them, get them more ability to retain them. And so that was kind of the whole thought, was to get them support and help. And I know it didn't necessarily seem like that, and it may not, because they came to Scappoose because they wanted to be in Scappoose. And now I see that and I hear that, and it's important to me as well. But the whole, I think, big part of it was to help out the officers that we have going forward.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
One thing that we hadn't discussed and I thought of because of Councilor Jacobs, you were talking about sustainability of funding and a levy. There is another option to fund public safety, and that is a public safety fee. Nothing is ever pleasant when you go out and ask the public for money. I mean, they pay a lot in taxes, and it's always a hard discussion to have. But that kind of a fee is sustainable because it is controlled by the city. And because we're talking about a survey in public safety and costs and potentially raising money, it might be worth considering a question about that. Because we already have this opportunity and minds will be on this topic to ask, and then we at least have evaluation potentially of where these things rank for the public if we do need to, if council decides to take action, pursue funding.
How are those fees structured? Is it percentage or?
It depends. I mean, a lot of it's about what you're looking to raise. So that would be a back and forth with finance about where are we looking at, where are we looking to go, where are we now, what's the gap, and how do we get there? That can be a percentage, it can be a flat dollar amount. Typically, it's assessed through the water bill, because that's where you water collect it.
That is what St. Helens is looking at if their levy fails.
And that's another thing about the levy is we don't know what their levy looks like, and I think that might be a good bellwether. What happens here if we were to choose a levy? These are really common. For example, I just talked with the city manager of Happy Valley last week. Their permanent rate 64 cents per thousand. That's about a fifth of what we have. So their public safety levy is $2.80, give or take.
So that would be, I do like that idea, Isaac. Thank you for bringing that up, because one of the pieces of feedback I got from one of the cities, I can't remember which one, is that it's also difficult to build a police department on a levy fee structure because those are also not permanent, right? So it's really hard to convince officers to come to a community that's funded by a levy that, every 3-5 years, you're dependent on the voters to pass that again to sustain the level of service. So I like that service fee idea. But again, we kind of, in order for people to truly indicate whether they'd be supportive of that, we have to give them some sense of how much that would.
Yeah, 100%.
I don't know if that's an estimate that we can provide.
So President.
So to me, this is exactly opposite of what we just got done saying. We want to survey the community about what they want, but then we're going to impose a fee on them that they have no decision. That doesn't make any sense to me.
That wasn't what I was trying to suggest.
Well,
I'm sorry.
If we're gonna raise money and charge an extra fee, then I would want the public to have a vote on that, and that would be through a levy. I'm not for adding a public safety fee where people don't have a choice.
Yeah, I mean, I think those type of things we can take time, and we'd have time once, if you decide to stay local, then you can look at those and take some time. I think we need to make a decision though, so the department can move forward, so we can look for a chief. We have openings, we can't hire without this, the stability of knowing. So I think I do owe it to them to try to make a quick decision on that soon. So are we okay with?
Yeah, I will get to work with Councilor LaFrance to get some questions together and float that by, I guess, through Larry to share with council to gather any additional feedback. And then we'll work with maybe Isaac to figure out how to deploy that, how best to deploy that. And then come back with our best estimate for what would be a reasonable time for us to revisit this discussion. And then Carol, is it possible to get kind of what the financial picture could look like for 5 years in terms of funding and where there may be gaps
Very
and
hard to
how we,
project. It's pretty hard to project. I mean, I can assume 3%, you know, in the, you know, what in our tax
Increase of,
very small, but we do get the 3%, you know, and we can certainly project the 3%, which covers maybe a COLA and you know,
Mhm.
but, so we've got to look at other things. And another thing that I know I didn't mention is that if we have more police officers, I would expect we're gonna have more fines. That's gonna bring some revenue in. You know, so there's, you know, we're kind of understaffed now and that makes it worse, fortunately. But I can get some numbers for you. I'll do the best I can. And like I say, I don't want to make something up.
right.
Because it's difficult, because I can say that, you know, we can have projected that we're going to have these houses built. Those are going to add $90,000 worth of revenue. But what if the houses don't get built? You know, so I'm really, I'm very hesitant. I'm too conservative to do that. You know, but I can project we're going to have some development and increased housing. At other sources of revenue, I can pretty much, these can really only say we can certainly cut costs. We've already cut a lot of costs, but just a lot lower than it was. So
Carol, do you know how much we bring in from fines now? I thought
I
most of
can-
that goes to DPSST for the academy.
the, currently, but if I'd had a few minutes, I would have looked it up for you. But I think the last time I looked it up, you know, we budget $100,000 in fines because you gotta pay, we have to make sure we can budget to pay, you know, the fees on them. We've brought in, I do believe it's around 30.
30,000
That's,
after fees.
yeah,
And
I
by,
think that's hot, probably on the high side.
and by fees, you mean that we have to pay to the
Application
state?
Fees.
Yeah. That we have to
We
pay.
do have to pay part of that out. So part of that has to go to the county and to the state.
Okay, been at it a long time. Anything else to add? Appreciate all your input. Again, you know, we'll be at the town meeting on Saturday, so get the word out if, we'll be looking for the questionnaires. Hopefully we'll have some by Saturday and get a sense. We have a meeting in 2 weeks. We'll see what information we have by then to see if any changes our thoughts, but we really worked hard with the police department to say have an answer by May 6th. So hopefully we'll be able to stick with that and have some good feedback and make a decision by then. Okay? Thank you.
yep. And Mayor, was there anyone in the audience that was going to provide content on this agenda item?
I've already read Teresa's comment. His question if we're gonna go out for community input.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Just to be clear, what are we doing?
Oh.
Number 2.
One thing I'd like to say is that the mail outs in the water bill, on the budget committee, there was a lady who didn't even look at them. She looked at her bill, threw it in the garbage, and probably a lot of people do that. So putting it into that bill is probably not a good idea. A separate mail out for the survey.
Yeah, and yeah, is it just a barcode, a UPC type of thing they can take a
No,
picture of?
so we typically do multiple options. The last one we did, we wanted to run an envelope that was very clear that it was a survey from the city to make it obvious that what it exactly was. It was a single page to make it more accessible and easier for people to feel like they fill out. Not as much narrative, but the questions were a little robust. And then they could either fill a paper out with a return envelope prepaid to gain more people to respond. We also had a QR where people would scan it and just do it online.
Is there a way on there to type in your water bill or something to where it registers so we know?
So when you do the electronic collection, some of the survey tools allow you to block IPs. So as you basically as somebody fills it out, it prevents that particular essentially special address from applying in. I mean, you can always defeat that, right? You can always find a way to rig a survey. That's just a reality. I think that with the mailer option and the electronic is, I think what we've seen is that, historically we haven't looked at demographic data, names, address returns. I think that we have gained a lot of more public input because we don't collect those things. I think some people don't want to be identified or have the potential to be identified. And so I think it's one of those games where, when you run the numbers, statistically speaking, you can control some of that. And other times, just like with any survey, you kind of have to take the lumps that come with it.
So would one of the questions be, do you live inside city limits?
Absolutely. That's a standard question. Do you live inside city limits? Is one of our standards, and we typically use that. I think that our assumption is this community is upstanding citizens and that they are going to respect the process and give one vote.
If we put that on our Facebook page with the QR code and get it out and get it on Saturday, then we should be able to get information back sooner than waiting
Yeah,
at
so
a
we
water
would put it
bill.
on our Facebook page. That'd probably be how we do it, is the individual mailer, a couple grand, and then the Facebook.
Can we make the
that way.
QR code only work once?
On the mailer? On the mailer, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I guess it's gonna be a generic QR code though, so that wouldn't be
Yeah.
possible, would it? Yeah, never mind.
Yeah.
Everybody has
It's
a account. I don't. I got kicked
Yeah.
off of it.
Yeah, we're gonna plaster it all over. It'll be on your car in the Fred Meyer parking lot, on the window.
I think I would like to see about 800 to 1,000 people respond. We did the Peace Candle survey. We had about 1,000 about that. So about 700 were from the city, and that was when we hit the statistically relevant kind of barrier, is about 700 people. So personally, for me, I'd really like to see about that much, if not more. I think this is a really hot issue for everybody. That's kind of what I'd be looking at.
Somewhere we can also put in the paper.
We could try that.
QR code. Okay. Hi,
I'm Darlene Marquardt. I don't live in the city. I don't think this is on the.
it's on. I see the red.
Anyway, my mom does though. I grew up in the city. But anyhow, I was just going to say, along with that mailer that you send out, would you give people maybe the option that they could drop it in the Dropbox out here?
Absolutely.
No,
Absolutely.
Because I know like my mom would never do a QR code. She
Yeah.
wouldn't have-
If they bring it to City Hall, we'll take it to.
You know, but I just thought if they could drop it, that could be an option. They could drop it in the Dropbox. Anyhow, that's
Yeah.
all.
Absolutely.
You're doing a great job.
Happy to do that.
Thank you.
Really hard
I mean,
Thanks, Arlene.
thing to-
so I think council wants to, stick with a formal action. So I think, are we leaning more to survey residents who live within, city limits, but, we're changing it up a little bit, but we're going with option 2 right now, surveying residents.
That's what
Okay,
it sounds like. Yep.
thank you. Appreciate it, guys. Thank you.
What was that a voice? Was that a full consent? Just want to make sure.
Tie vote yet? So you have to swear in first.
I was gonna say, I think I'm technically not on the council yet, so I was holding off on anything.
Do we need to do a motion on this or no? No?
I think at this point, we've spent a lot of staff time on this, more than the 2 hours. I think that it just in general, for the transparency and accountability, I think a motion would be appropriate. I think I heard everything, but
I mean, just one, I know you gotta go. Are there any at the college and so forth? Is there anybody who does surveys? Is there any, can
Andrew.
you hire a firm to do a survey?
I do surveys, research, double surveys, yeah.
With the amount of time we have and everything, like a survey
You're better
monkey.
off to hire a firm to do a survey than do it through the mail and so forth.
I was told that PSU might have a program that would actually do it, but I just don't know how long that would take to get up and running.
yeah,
Or PCC.
I don't know. We've never looked outside before.
And we're gonna be up to, $5,000-6,000 at least.
So is
Yeah, I
it
just,
worth looking into? Maybe can somebody do it
Professional.
tomorrow and
Yeah.
just get a decision right, or get an answer right away to see if PCC or PSU would do it and within
How
the
long?
time frame?
You're looking for a month start to finish done, like before May 6th.
I'm thinking like Survey
Very
Monkeys seem to go, Survey Monkeys seem to be going pretty quick from the one.
Well, the hard part with SurveyMonkey is they don't have the different methods. You're not going to necessarily get a mailer, and you're not necessarily get a Facebook code. You're not going to necessarily have the option to drop it or mail it back in a prepaid envelope. And I think that's part of why we kept it internal, is so that people have different methods, what they feel comfortable with to get responses, because it's been very challenging to get people to respond.
Yeah, I would think that a mailer to our mailing list that we have within the city limits would probably be the closest accuracy that we're going to get.
That was the most effective by far.
Going
And
on
I-
it. So, yes, Kim?
With a direct mailer too, we could actually like number each of them, right? So we can have somewhat of a control while we can maintain anonymity, right? We don't have to request their information, but we can at least identify the uniqueness of each response potentially through a hard copy and a direct mailer. Because I do still have concerns about, I mean, I like the ideas of, you know, making this as broadly accessible as possible, but I do have concerns about quality control with the information received, ensuring it's from, again,
So we have,
residents that are within the city.
we have about 2,500 to 3,000 residencies or addresses. And the city has about 8,000 residents, and it's like 50, probably like 40, 60 for underage, like non-voters versus voters. So you might get close, you might miss a couple people, but
So where is the mailing list coming from?
that was generated by GIS. So we basically drew a box around the city, pulled every single address out of GIS, and then controlled for duplicates.
Does that assure that we have PO boxes though for those that get their mail?
Not necessarily, and so the PO box is making sure the apartments are listed, and then yeah, making sure all those boxes are checked would be something that we would want to do.
And the elections office doesn't have, I mean, they have lists for everything, but do they have lists that have if you live in the city limits or not?
Not sure. That could be something we looked into. I think we've never looked at it because we assumed there might be a cost with getting the list from them.
Dawn's usually really responsive, and I believe the list is under, Brady, do you know, under $100?
Yeah, I'll reach out to them and see.
Okay. We'll get to work on this and I will keep
Let's see.
City Manager Lehman up to date on the progress.
So
to communicate out to-
To kind of help staff here, I'm looking for a motion to entertain a motion to survey residents on their, I think, level of service and contracting concerns. If there's any other way you would want to word it?
Or survey regarding law enforcement services in the city of Scappoose.
Entertain a motion to survey residents on their law enforcement. What was that?
Law enforcement services in the city of Scappoose.
A motion to survey residents on their law enforcement services within the city of Scappoose.
So moved.
Moved by Councilor Santiago. Any seconds?
Second, I thought. you were
Second
going-
by Council President Miller. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor state by saying aye. Aye.
Right.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you, council.
Thank you for hanging in there. We are on to the calendar. It's April 1st, got a whole month. Big April 6th, annual town meeting, 9 a.m., Scappoose High School to serve. Tuesday, 50-year plan stakeholder advisory committee meeting, I believe at 6 p.m. on Tuesday, April 9th. Planning Commission on April 11th at 7 p.m. Council work session, 6 p.m. Monday, April 15th, followed by City Council at 7 p.m. April 18th, Thursday, Parks and Rec at 6 p.m. and April 25th, Planning Commission, 7 p.m. That is our calendar. Interim City Manager Lehman, any?
Justin, with the search now for a city manager is underway, hoping to get for the applicant.
Please get the word out because the search firm will be there Saturday and they will be there to survey as well on what kind of city manager we would like, what we're looking for, what we need. So they will be there asking questions of our citizens. Well,
Everybody, what we really need is if you know of anyone interested, we need to do some really personal selection or notification. So if anybody knows anyone who would be a good applicant, please encourage them.
all right. Lieutenant Flewellen, you got anything?
Yes, thank you very much, council, for your time. And I just want to say thank you also citizens for participating in your local government. And lastly, thank you for personal comments today. I didn't pay anybody for those.
Sure.
But I want to say this though, I'm part of a team. I've been in all working here for the past year and a half or so, actually a little bit longer and a half, of the officers with little minimal resources sometimes doing a lot of work. I'm doing 2 to 3 times the work of the officer. So, and not just the officer, but also to our administrative staff, such as our evidence custodian that helps make sure that property is properly maintained and ready for dispositions or for courts. Our office administrator who does an amazing job and kind of like the unofficial chief of the department who helps making sure that things are being done there. So it's an honor just to be here in this position. I believe that being a leader is a privilege. Something I do not take very lightly. And just one man, it's really the people down there and my officers and patrol officers that are making the things go out there and work. So that's all I had to say.
And you were Friday night, you were down working the parking lot. Were you valet, driving parking cars, working at the festival at the high school instead of being home with your family on a Friday night? I appreciate it.
No problem, sir. That's what we're here for. So thank you.
We'll start with Kim online in case we lose you.
No,
So-
nothing for me today. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, Counselor Bailey, anything you'd like to add?
Nope, I'm good.
Great. Thank you. Counselor Jacobs?
Melvin, I feel the same.
I almost thought we were gonna be out of here by 9.
Lieutenant Fuan, I just want to say, like, you're such a professional and you really are the model for
It's too much pressure.
I know it is. But I have to tell you, every interaction, every time I see you, it just, you bring a smile to my face because you are the standard. And so I just appreciate everything that you do and just, again, how you are helping us through this with integrity, grace, and professionalism. So thank you. Okay, so I am the new,
Liaison.
thank you, battery low, for Parks and Rec. And April 20th is Earth Day. We will be having Earth Day here over in Heritage Park, so please come. It starts at 8 a.m. and we'll go till 3 p.m. There's lots of different activities that are scheduled throughout the morning into the early afternoon. There will be a raffle at 2:30. You have to be present. They're raffling away an electric bike and some electric hand tools, so highly encourage you to come. Lots of good stuff for the kiddos. Oh, look, there's a flyer. Let me guess, water bill. So that's coming up. And then also, and if you would like to get on some Earth Day good vibes, they're always looking for volunteers. So if you're interested, please reach out to the Parks and Rec Committee. JJ is your contact, or reach out to me directly and I'll get you in contact. And coming up, something to look forward to, June 8th will be our summer festival. It's in planning. There's lots of good vendors that they've got in store. They've got like Bigfoot coming and the Rock Foundry and native plants and kids art show. So that's going to be a really nice way for us to kick off summer. That is all.
Thank you. Thank you. Counselor LaFrance.
Yeah, thank you again, Scappoose Police Department Lieutenant. I mean, it was doing these interviews, it was really apparent that Scappoose is a desirable place to be a police officer, especially after we get the salary up to where it should be. So just hearing that they could work somewhere else for quite a bit higher pay is a testament to what we have going on in the city. And so I'd like to keep that momentum going. And then really looking forward to engaging with our community in the town meeting this Saturday. Thanks.
Thank you. Counselor Santiago.
You. Yes, water bill. There's several flyers that were in the last water bill. So don't throw them in the trash. Actually open it up. The city of Scappoose is having a blood drive here on the 5th, 10 to 4. There's there's going to be a spring auction for Grand Watts on April 20th at 4:30 at the Columbia County Fairgrounds. Of course, our annual meeting is on April 6th at 9 a.m. at the here at the high school. And another thing too is that I'm the liaison for the economic development, and they're working on a strategic plan very just in general, not necessarily. So it's in the works. I will share more than I know. But also, I saw this online. There's a career fair in Columbia County on April 18th. So that has to do with advanced manufacturing, construction trades. So the construction trade, just because I know in my work, that is really high. I need right now in the trade. So, if you have someone that's in need of a new career, we have one locally here at the OMIC Training Center, ETC, April 18th. Um,
Thank you. Thank you for coming tonight, Carol. Thank you, Lieutenant. Senator Merkley is in St. Helens Saturday also at 6 p.m. I'm not sure the location yet, but no solar panel company coming to St. Helens. The company that was going to make solar panels decided not to come. And so that means we've dodged a bullet with power at this time. They were going to take all 35 megawatts. That is not happening, but we still are in need of more power. So that we'll be working on. That's all I have for tonight. Appreciate it. Council President Miller.
Yeah. Just to reiterate on Councilor Santiago's a statement about the spring auction for the Grant Watts Parent Organization. That is on, usually Council President Greisen, before she left us, usually gave a really good briefing about this, but it's on Saturday, April 20th, and it starts at 4:30. If you want more information on that, I believe if you type in Grant Watts Parent Organization and Facebook, I believe all the information comes up there. Also, if you need more information, you can always email me, or I think the city has the information on it also. Joe, if I heard correctly, the 24th is also the facility tour on the calendar too. So for council, 24th of April. And then as far as the mailers go that are going to be sent out regarding the law enforcement services in the city, this is just for Councilor Holmes and the friends to consider, but maybe putting in a factual second page, like facts, bullet points that people can read to learn more. Because I think it's going to be really difficult if you do 4 or 5 survey questions without context. And we need to make sure the information that's put out is factual and they're not getting information from potentially misleading social media posts. So we need to just make sure that the factual information is there and then accompanying the survey results. At least that's my opinion. Lieutenant Flellen asked for more compliments.
Oh, he'll be at Earth Day flipping for hot dogs.
It's very apparent that you
Patrol officers.
that you really dislike compliments. So, but anyway, thank you very much for all your leadership. It's very apparent. That's all I have. Thank you.
Councilor, thank you, Councilor.
Yeah, I forgot to ask, did we say we were gonna survey the police department as part of the survey
I would reach out. I'd recommend to reach out and speak to them,
directly?
directly talk to them. I'll start mine over again. No, meeting adjourned.